Chapter 9:15. Bastard. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the few people on the hill in the distance changed, and their eyes revealed faint anger. The appearance of Wang Chong's second halo made them feel like they had been played around with by Wang Chong. Daluan Ruozhen, I suddenly understand why you want to kill him so much. Under the golden wolf banner, Duwusili's eyes were dark and sinister, his entire body exploding with a killing intent that caused even the air around him to twist. In just 2 exchanges of blows, before they had even truly clashed, Wang Chong had completely ignited the celestial wolf great general's killing intent. If this kind of person is allowed to live, whether it's for the Uzun or the Western Turks, it will only lead to endless troubles in the future. There were not many people that a celestial wolf great general like Duwusili cared about. Even a brigadier general like Agud Ulan was his subordinate and had been personally taught by him. From this, one could easily imagine just how high Duwusili's standards were. But even though Wang Chong had not reached the level of a brigadier general, he was enough to make Duwusili firmly remember him. Shamshak, take the celestial wolf cavalry and prepare to kill the Tang people. Duwusili suddenly said. After a few moments of silence, a hoarse and sinister voice came from behind him. Yes, milord. Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Wuzong turned their heads and realized that a Turkic general wearing the silver celestial wolf armor had appeared behind Duwusili at some point. His body was slender and did not leak any energy. Standing in the middle of the celestial wolf cavalry, no one had noticed him. If not for Duwusili's words, no one would have noticed him. Brigadier General. A thought flashed across their minds. Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Wuzong's eyes revealed a hint of fear. Concealing one's aura in front of a group of imperial great generals was no easy task. This alone showed that the other party possessed extraordinary abilities. Not only that, this Shamshak's aura was cold and gloomy. With one look, one could tell that he was an extremely dangerous and difficult character to deal with. Everyone, listen up. The Lord has ordered us to set off. Shamask ignored the gazes of the crowd. He mounted a Turkic steed covered in spikes, his eyes bursting with a bright light. The moment he mounted his horse, his aura underwent a heaven-shaking transformation. It had been indistinct and ever-changing, but now it had become as fierce and powerful as a storm. Nay. The 10,000-strong celestial wolf cavalry trembled as they neighed in the morning sun. These top-class Turkic warhorses had been specially trained and raised, so they no longer seemed like warhorses, but a pack of wolves. Get ready. At almost the same time, Daluan Ruozhen turned his head to Huishu Wuzong. Have Huoba Senji move out as well. There's no need. I'm ready. Daluan Ruozhen had barely spoken when a muscular man with the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear, clad in black and red armor, slowly rode out from the rear. His eyes were like bronze bells, his skin was a little dark, and 2 red ribbons with golden edges fluttered around his shoulders. This was the symbol of the highest commander of the Mutri Great Cavalry. Huoba Senji was one of the guards of the Uzun Empire's royal capital, the leader of the Mutri Great Cavalry, and one of Daluan Ruozhen's earliest supporters. In this long expedition to Talas, Huoba Senji had been one of the main forces. Without his support, without the 7,000 valiant Mutri Great Cavalry following him into battle, even if Daluan Ruozhen wanted to do something, even if he wanted to conquer Talas, he would be powerless without the valiant Mutri Great Cavalry. As the guard of the royal capital and the commander of the Mutri Great Cavalry, Huoba Senji's most important duty was to guard the Tsenpo. All the guards of the royal capital had been models of loyalty. Without the Tsenpo's order, they would never leave their posts. But now, Huoba Senji had not only deserted his post without the Tsenpo's order, but he had even mobilized the strongest Mutri Great Cavalry. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Uzun Empire. According to the laws of the Uzun, this was a crime punishable by death. Daluan Ruozhen, regardless of the outcome of this battle, I only have one request. No matter what, do not get in the way of the battle between me and the Wuxian cavalry. Huoba Senji's eyes shone, his expression cold and aloof. His gaze did not care about the battle, but was focused on one person. Of course. Daluan Ruozan nodded without hesitation. That was the agreement between us to begin with. Huoba Senji sternly said. Other than helping Daluan Ruozan defeat the Tang dynasty and restore the reputation of the Uzan Empire, he had left the royal capital and led the Mutri Great Cavalry to Talas. More importantly, he had to defeat an opponent. The Wuxian cavalry of the Tang dynasty. The Uzan Empire dominated the world through its cavalry, and its echelon formation was renowned throughout the world. The entire plateau was covered in Uzan cavalry. Of all the cavalry, the most powerful were the White Xiong, Qinghai, and Mutri great kings, who stood at the peak of the pyramid. These were the three kings of the Uzan cavalry. But in the Battle of Zhangsheng training camp, the 8,000 Qinghai cavalry had all died at the hands of Wang Chang's Wuxian cavalry, and in the Battle of the Triangular Gap, the 5,000 white braves led by Dian Mangpoch had been completely wiped out. Two of the best cavalry of the Uzan Empire had been lost, leaving only the Mutri Great Cavalry. Two of the best cavalry forces had been wiped out by a single opponent. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Uzan Empire, and the opponent was the Tang dynasty, which had never been known for its cavalry. This matter had shamed all the Uzan cavalry on the plateau, including the Mutri Great Cavalry. This was why Huoba Senji had disobeyed the imperial decree and led the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry out of the royal capital into the wilderness of the city of Talas. The Mutri Great Cavalry had more than 300 years of history and were publicly acknowledged as the strongest existence in the Uzan Empire. Whether it was for the entire Uzan Empire or for the honor and pride of all Uzan cavalry, the Mutri Great Cavalry had to defeat the Tang dynasty's Wuxian cavalry in front of the world and prove themselves to everyone. For this goal, Huoba Senji had fully supported Daluan Ruozan. He had even used his connections to help Daluan Ruozan borrow many soldiers from other royal districts. Ready. Huoba Senji slanted his long sword. That crimson treasured sword that was bestowed by the fifth king of Tsenpo was pointed straight at the rising sun behind the hill. Rumble. The earth shook and dust roiled. Following Huoba Senji's order, the Mutri Great Cavalry, who had been standing still all this time, began to move. An enormous aura exploded from the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. A wave of heat surged out, causing even the grass on the hill to wither. Boom! In the next moment, the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry poured down from the top of the hill like a flood under the rising sun. In that moment, the heavy hoofbeats shook the world, even drowning out the sounds of battle on the eastern battlefield. The 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry were fast, but the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry led by Shamshak were even faster. The moment the Mutri Great Cavalry charged down, the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry were already galloping toward the battlefield, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. At that moment, even the world seemed to lose color. "Milord! Look over there." At the same time, Kong Xian seemed to sense something and suddenly raised his head to look at the distant Celestial Wolf Cavalry, a hint of shock in his eyes. In terms of armor, aura, and strength, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were completely different from the other Turkic cavalry. Kong Xian felt like he was facing a powerful foe. And over there, Uzan has also moved. At the same time, another Wuxian cavalry officer noticed the activity in the distance and loudly called out as he pointed in another direction. Everyone turned their heads and saw that behind the Celestial Wolf Cavalry, there was another group of cavalry clad in gold and red armor, galloping over from another direction like a tidal wave. These two powerful forces of cavalry, one in front and the other in the rear, were charging toward the battlefield from a different angle. In a flash, an intense sense of danger swept over them. Both the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry were among the most powerful cavalry forces on the continent, standing at the apex of the tens of thousands of cavalry on the continent. Just one of the two was already very difficult to deal with, let alone two cavalry forces charging at the same time. Li Sai rode the Fergana horse amidst thousands of cavalry. His heart was in turmoil, and in an instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Both the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry were illustrious and top-class cavalry forces of this world, their fighting power far surpassing that of other cavalry forces. Moreover, the two great cavalry forces added together far outnumbered the Wuxian cavalry. To advance or to retreat, to fight or to defend, Li Sai had to make a decision in the shortest time possible. "Milord. What do we do?" Kong Xian's anxious voice came from next to him. The two forces of cavalry were approaching, and everyone felt a powerful pressure that they had never felt in any of the previous battles. Li Sai didn't say anything. His eyes swept across the battlefield as fast as lightning. The battle was still going on. His ears were filled with roars from all directions. One after another, the horses fell heavily to the ground. Blood splattered everywhere, and dust filled the air. The two cavalry forces were getting closer and closer. If they wanted to retreat, it was too late. But when Li Sai saw Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, and the others fighting with the Western Turks and the Uzan, his heart froze, and he immediately made up his mind. "We have no path of retreat. Everyone, hear my order. Prepare for battle." Li Sai unsheathed his sword, the massive Wuxia steel sword that was taller than a man raised high into the air and exploded with a heaven-shaking aura. At this moment, the entire world seemed to tremble. Boom! After a few moments of silence, the earth quaked as the 5,000 Wuxian Great Cavalry began to move. But this time, their target was not the Western Turks or Uzan cavalry, but the charging Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry in the rear. Chapter 9:16. Boom! 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 The 5,000 Wuxian cavalry were unstoppable, sweeping through everything in their path. Bang! A Western Turkic horseman in the front was struck by a Wuxian cavalry. With a scream, he was thrown 10-some meters into the air along with his horse. 1, 2, 3, countless Western Turkic and Tibetan cavalry were swept aside like weeds by the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. They were either knocked to the ground or thrown into the air, an intimidating sight to behold. Good. Only by killing this kind of enemy will I feel a greater sense of accomplishment. As Shamshak watched from the back of his horse, he showed no fear. On the contrary, a hint of excitement appeared on his face, making him seem even more savage than ever. In the entire Celestial Wolf Cavalry, including the Western Turkic Khaganate, Shamshak could be said to be the most sinister and bizarre brigadier general. He was cruel, bloodthirsty, and also as cunning and sinister as a viper. He lacked none of the boldness and strength of character that an illustrious brigadier general of the empire should have. But no matter how many eccentricities he had or how loathsome his style was, Shamshak would always be Dewussali's most valued subordinate. In Dewussali's mind, he was even more important than the Black Wolf Yabgu Agudulan. The reason Dewussali regarded him with such importance was very simple: Shamshak knew how to kill his opponents, no matter how powerful they were. "Everyone, hear my order. That Imperial Martial Tang people leader is mine. None of you are allowed to touch him. I want to cut off his head and take it back to use as a wine vessel," Shamshak savagely said. As he spoke, he excitedly licked his dry lips, a bloodthirsty look in his eyes. "Yes." The Celestial Wolf Cavalry loudly responded, all of them extremely excited. What a pity. Such powerful cavalry are paired with such a weak imperial martial leader. I really don't know how Agudulan lost to them. But it doesn't matter, I can immediately take off his head effortlessly and avenge you. Shamshak looked at the distant Li Sai like he was a weak lamb waiting to be slaughtered. It was far too easy for a brigadier general to kill an imperial martial expert. In Shamshak's eyes, Li Sai was already a dead man. Rumble. Dust churned as a pitch-black halo of light exploded from Shamshak's body. It swept out like a storm, radiating to the feet of every celestial wolf cavalry. The celestial wolf cavalry, who had already reached the pinnacle of speed, were boosted yet again by this halo. Like a massive sword, they charged toward Li Sai and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. The earth rumbled and swayed. The 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry clashed, attracting the attention of countless people. Marquis. General Li is in danger. On the second defense line, Xue Qianjun stood at Wang Chang's side and almost immediately noticed the activity in the distance. A hint of deep concern appeared in Xue Qianjun's eyes as he watched the two groups of cavalry charge at each other. Xue Qianjun had never doubted the strength of the Wuxian cavalry. In his mind, they were the strongest cavalry in the world. But that was only when Marquis was leading them. There was an insurmountable chasm between the imperial martial realm and the Saint martial realm. Li Sai was only at the peak of the imperial martial realm. Without Wang Chong to lead him, it was simply impossible for him to contend against a brigadier general of the celestial wolf cavalry. There's no need to worry. An indifferent voice rang out. Wang Chong stood beneath his massive banner, his face calm and unperturbed. But Marquis, Xue Qianjun wanted to argue, but Wang Chong waved his hand and cut him off. Don't worry. Nothing will happen to Li Sai. He had been paying attention to the battlefield this entire time. The celestial wolf cavalry of the Dewusili Empire and the Wuxian cavalry of the Tang dynasty were two top-class cavalry forces that had never met before. That they were going to fight here was both a coincidence and an inevitability. He had already made ample preparations for this battle, including the problem of Li Sai. Go. Only danger can temper your potential. I believe that one day, you will reveal your true brilliance. As Wang Chong gazed at Li Sai's back, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. All this time, Li Sai had been sheltered under Wang Chong's wings. Whether it was the battle against Dian Mengpoch at the Triangular Gap or the battle between Qixi Armory and Agud Ulan, Li Sai had been too safe. Because Wang Chong had shielded him from all the dangers and storms, Li Sai had remained at the peak of the imperial martial realm. He had not been able to break through to the Saint martial realm and become a true invincible general. In his previous life, the reason why Li Sai was able to achieve such a high level of success in such a short period of time and become the invincible great general who could single-handedly change the course of the entire battlefield and reverse the entire situation was because of the continuous dangerous battles. Time and time again, he had risked his life and escaped death. On the edge of life and death, Li Sai had forced out the potential in his body. In such a short period of time, he had become a legend of the empire. Death and injury were destined for Li Sai's life. Only by facing these dangers could Li Sai grow. This was the conclusion that Wang Chong had reached after thinking for a long time. Xue Qianjun stared at Wang Chong's profile in a daze. Sensing the determination in his eyes, he seemed to understand something and slowly relaxed. Together with Wang Chong, he silently gazed into the distance, watching the battle that was about to unfold between the two greatest armies of cavalry in the world. Awu. In the distance, dust billowed as the two groups of cavalry got closer and closer. Just when the two groups were about 2,000 feet away from each other and their auras locked onto each other, suddenly, an earth-shaking howl rang out in everyone's ears. That wasn't the howl of a wolf, because no wolf could make such a sound. Buzz. Just as the wolf howled, something strange happened. An invisible energy suddenly surged out of the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry like a tsunami. The air instantly distorted and became indistinct, and the aura of the celestial wolf cavalry instantly transformed into a massive golden wolf head. Its eyes were disdainful, dignified, and ferocious. Rumble. The moment the wolf head appeared, the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry's speed, strength, and dexterity all received a massive boost. Even the warhorses seemed to have changed, becoming much larger and more muscular. Even the sound of their hooves became much heavier. In the blink of an eye, the pressure and aura exuded by the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry multiplied, undergoing a heaven-shaking transformation. The dust they kicked up soared from 10-some meters into the air, rising at a rapid pace. But this was not the end of the celestial wolf cavalry's transformation. "General, look!" At Li Sai's side, Kong Xian's eyes widened and his pupils constricted as he suddenly pointed into the distance. Right before the eyes of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, the moment the golden wolf appeared, the celestial wolf cavalry suddenly doubled in number, becoming a dense crowd of 16,000, charging forward. Illusion. Seeing this, Li Sai's eyelids twitched as he sat on the Fergana horse. He immediately recognized what was going on. The celestial wolf cavalry had suddenly doubled in number. There were at least 16,000 celestial wolf cavalry, perhaps even more. But this was impossible. There was no question that more than half of them were illusions. In all his years on the battlefield, this was the first time Li Sai had encountered such a situation. The celestial wolf illusory formation. As this thought flitted through Li Sai's mind, he suddenly recalled a rumor he had heard while serving in the Biting Protectorate. It was said that the Turkic steppe had a supreme celestial wolf illusory formation. This illusory formation had been invented by those strange shaman priests of the steppe and had been passed down for a long time. It was one of the three supreme formations of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Biting Protector General Sis Hun had presided over the northern border for many years, rarely encountering a worthy opponent. And the only defeat he had suffered was at the hands of the celestial wolf illusory formation. It was rumored that in that battle, the steppe around the Biting Protectorate had been filled with the figures of the celestial wolf cavalry. It was because it was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake that the Biting Protector General had lost. Li Sai had not participated in that battle, so he did not know the specifics. But there was no one in the Biting Protectorate who did not know of the celestial wolf illusory formation. There was no doubt about this. "Marquis, what do we do?" In the rear, the Qixi officers at Wang Chang's side all broke out in cold sweat for Li Sai and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. The Wuxian cavalry against the celestial wolf cavalry, the Tang dynasty against the Western Turks, this clash had caused not just Xue Qianjuan's few subordinates, but even the officers behind the first defense line had sensed it and subconsciously glanced in the direction of the battle between Li Sai and Shamshak. The Wuxian cavalry were powerful, but the celestial wolf cavalry were also capable of fighting 10 men at once. No matter how one looked at the situation, the Wuxian cavalry were at a disadvantage. "Believe in him." Wang Chong said these three words, his expression unperturbed. The Wuxian cavalry were the most elite force under his command, and they were what he had relied on to sweep through the world. Although the Wuxian cavalry had not experienced many battles and were not seasoned warriors, their meteoric metal armor and Wuxi steel swords were top-class equipment that not even the Wuxian cavalry of the past possessed. In this aspect, the Wuxian cavalry were equipped in the most luxurious state. Chapter 9:17. Kill. As expected, the distant Li Sai seemed to sense Wang Chang's thoughts. Turning his gaze, he gripped the massive sword on his back, his expression hardening. "Hiya!" Without the slightest hesitation, Li Sai urged his 5,000 Wuxian cavalry toward the celestial wolf cavalry. "Stop!" At the same time, in the rear of the army, Huoba Senji suddenly raised an arm when he saw the change in the distance. He led the 7,000 Mutri great cavalry, dressed in gold and red armor and surging with waves of heat, to a sudden stop. "Milord?" The Mutri great cavalry officers at Huoba Senji's side were stunned by this sudden order and subconsciously turned to their commanders. Shouldn't the Mutri great cavalry be working with the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry to destroy the Tang people's army? It's too late. The Turk celestial wolf cavalry were one step ahead of us. Huoba Senji's eyes were as bright as the sun as he solemnly looked into the distance. "Don't forget that in this battle, we went against the royal decree and came here. If our Mutri great cavalry wants to defeat the Tang people, we need no help from others. But the Prime Minister and the other great generals hoped that we work together with the Celestial Wolf Cavalry to deal with them. One of the Mutri Great Cavalry deputy commanders next to Huoba Senji said. Does the Celestial Wolf Cavalry seem like they need our help? Huoba Senji indifferently said as he looked forward. Several of the deputy commanders of the Mutri Great Cavalry subconsciously looked into the distance and saw the Celestial Wolf Cavalry in front of them. With the Celestial Wolf illusory formation activated, their strength had risen by a great deal. Even from the perspective of the Mutri Great Cavalry, it was quite astonishing. In terms of momentum, the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry had completely suppressed the Tang Dynasty's Wuxian Cavalry. The deputy commanders of the Mutri Great Cavalry immediately understood what was going on and felt slightly relieved. Wait until the Celestial Wolf Cavalry needs our help. Huoba Senji's crisp voice rang in everyone's ears. Yes. The generals immediately responded loudly. Prime Minister, this Huoba Senji, should we go and urge him? At the same time, on the high hills behind, Huishu Wuzong couldn't help but frown when he saw this scene. He took 2 steps forward and whispered in Daluan Ruozen's ear. Huoba Senji was far too proud, and the Mutri Great Cavalry was far too proud. At a time like this, Uzun and the Western Turks should be cooperating seamlessly, but Huoba Senji's order for the Mutri Great Cavalry to stop and watch the battle from the rear had completely destroyed this feeling. This was not a good thing for Uzun's alliance with the Western Turks. Don't worry. Huoba Senji knew what to do. Moreover, Shamshak and the Celestial Wolf Cavalry won't like anyone interfering. Daluan Ruozen had an indifferent and relaxed expression on his face. Although Huoba Senji had stopped, he had little effect on the battle. The 3 sides were working together to besiege the Tang dynasty, and no one could change this. But, Huishu Wuzong still wanted to try and persuade him, but Daluan Ruozen shot him a glance. Huishu Wuzong subconsciously turned his head and followed Daluan Ruozen's gaze. Nearby, he saw Dewusili, his head held high and his expression indifferent, standing beneath the golden wolf banner, his hands held behind his back and a proud expression on his face. In his daze, Huishu Wuzong suddenly realized something and fell silent. Daluan Ruozen was correct. Dewusili and his Celestial Wolf Cavalry were the 3 best cavalry forces of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and in terms of military record, Dewusili had even defeated the Biting Protector General. Given his abilities, he had to be extremely confident in himself, so how could he allow others to interfere and help the Celestial Wolf Cavalry? It's about time. Huishu Huizong's heart jolted, and he immediately turned his head. In the distance, he saw a golden wolf howling in the sky as the Celestial Wolf illusory formation of the Western Turkic Celestial Wolf Cavalry covered the heavens and earth as they charged toward the 5,000 Wuxian Cavalry with an unstoppable momentum. The distance between the 2 sides was closing. In front of the mighty Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the 5,000 Wuxian Cavalry were like a tiny boat in the middle of a furious storm, ready to be torn apart at any moment. Celestial Wolf. The Wuxian Cavalry. The battle between these 2 elite cavalry forces had attracted everyone's attention. Wang Chong, Daluan Ruozen, Dewusili, and countless other soldiers of the Tang dynasty, the Uzun, and the Western Turks were all paying close attention to this clash of elite warriors. 200 zhang. 100 zhang. 70 zhang. The distance between the 2 sides was closing, and when it was only 50 zhang, roar. In the blink of an eye, everyone heard an earth-shattering roar. 10 charges, 10 victories, open. Boom. With a heaven-shaking rumble, the ground quaked. Without any hesitation, Li Sai took out the 10 charges, 10 victories formation. A surging energy containing boundless baleful energy and killing intent soared into the sky. In a flash, the energy exuded by the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry increased tenfold. Whether it was in terms of strength, speed, or dexterity, all of them had swelled. Not only that, an invisible energy began to rise from the bodies of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. Space began to blur as 1, 2, 3, 4, 49 phantoms appeared above the Wuxian cavalry. In the blink of an eye, these illusory shadows materialized into 49 giant golden spears. The 5,000 Wuxian cavalry had been training day after day for several months, and the 10 charges 10 victories formation was far more powerful than it had been in the past. Not only had the number of golden spears increased from 10 to 49, but the effect on the Wuxian cavalry had also greatly increased. Rumble. Thunderous booms came from the sky as dark clouds began to gather above the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, casting down their shadows and shrouding the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry. On the ground, the auras of Li Sai and the others also began to swell. In just a few moments, they had reached a level where they could stand on equal footing with the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry. Not only that, the aura of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry was still rising, surpassing the celestial wolf cavalry to an astonishing level. And this was not the end. In the distance, beneath the fluttering banner of the Qixi commander, Wang Chong had been paying close attention to Li Sai's movements this entire time. The moment Li Sai used the 10 charges 10 victories formation, Li Sai had the white-hoofed shadow connect with its master's mind, and the horse suddenly raised its hoof and stomped down. Rumble. There was a metallic clatter as 3 black and red war halos with peerless sharpness shot out from where Wang Chong was standing, swiftly engulfing the entire battlefield. In a flash, the power of these halos had caught up to the distant 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, and one halo of dusk stallion after another appeared beneath the feet of the Wuxian cavalry. The already powerful Wuxian cavalry were bolstered by the power of Wang Chong's halos, and their strength swelled once more, their energy completely incomparable to before. The dark clouds in the sky grew even thicker and more ferocious. Buzz. Hidden in the celestial wolf illusory formation, Shamshak paled at this sight. This is impossible. Shamshak's pupils constricted and his body trembled as he lost his composure for the first time. This Wuxian cavalry was completely different from the information he had gathered. At the very least, Uzun's Qinghai soldiers and white braves were not this powerful. Get ready to fight at any moment. Shamshak was not the only one who was shocked. Huoba Senji, 5,000 zhang away, was also shocked. The moment Li Sai used the 10 charges 10 victories formation, Huoba Senji's body trembled and he sat up straight on his horse. As he stared at the distant Wuxian cavalry, his eyes exploded with a sharp light and his expression turned grave. The transformation of the Wuxian cavalry had completely surpassed his expectations. He had originally believed that the celestial wolf cavalry of the Western Turks could easily defeat the Tang dynasty, but it now appeared that everything was full of variables and that things were no longer so simple. Whether or not the celestial wolf cavalry could defeat the Wuxian cavalry was still a question. Impossible. Since when did the Central Plains have such a powerful formation? On the distant hills, the Uzun and Western Turkic commanders stared at the dark clouds over the Wuxian cavalry and felt a massive shock. The celestial wolf Great General Dewusili standing beneath the banner of the Western Turkic commander was especially shaken, his entire body trembling in unprecedented shock. Formation phenomena. According to the legends, when a formation fused with the energy of the world, it could cause the heavens and earth to respond. This phenomenon would not cover a very large area and would not last for very long, but it meant that the formation was extremely powerful. Dewusili had only heard of this sort of formation from the shaman priests of the previous generation of the Western Turks. But this sort of formation was only a legend. Dewusili had traversed the world and encountered all sorts of experts, so he knew all the famous experts of the Tang dynasty like the back of his hand. Even the formation used by the Tang dynasty's war god Wang Zhongxi had been a hair's breadth from reaching this level of formation phenomena, and when he used it, all sorts of phenomena were on the verge of appearing. Apart from Wang Zhongxi, no one else could reach this level of formation phenomena. It was rumored that when one comprehended the celestial wolf illusory formation and used it to its peak, one could also cause formation phenomena. But Dewusili had made no progress after all these years, nor had he been able to figure out how to improve it. He had never imagined that in the distant foreign land of Talas, in the body of a boy of the Tang dynasty called Wang Chong, he would see the ultimate power of this formation. Chapter 9:18. No matter what, I have to find a way to get this thing. In a place where no one could see, Du Wuxili's fists were tightly clenched, an intense ambition in his heart. In the distance, as Li Sai and his 5,000 Wuxian cavalry pushed the 10 charges 10 victories formation to its limits, the most crucial moment had arrived. Kaiyil. Awu. Ah. Ah. Not only did Shamshak not retreat in the face of the Wuxian cavalry's formation phenomena, he was even more determined to kill them. Although Li Sai's 10 charges 10 victories formation seemed extremely powerful, the Western Turk Celestial Wolf illusory formation was no slouch. He was confident that he could lead the Celestial Wolf cavalry behind him to destroy the Tang dynasty's Wuxian cavalry as he had destroyed his enemies in the past. Neigh. Warhorses neighed. In an instant, dust billowed from the ground as the 16,000 Celestial Wolf cavalry clashed with the Black Steel cavalry without any fanciful movements. Rumble. The entire eastern battlefield shook and swayed, the earth rocking like a deck in the ocean. At that moment, the collision of two of the world's finest cavalry seemed to tear the earth apart. The sound of the collision drowned out all the fighting on the battlefield, including the rumble of ballista bolts and the clatter of metal. Buzz. After what seemed like an instant, but also like countless eons, everything returned to normal. Gales howled, warhorses neighed, and dust rose tensum-zhang into the air, filling the air like a sandstorm. In the midst of the roiling dust, the golden wolf head above the Celestial Wolf cavalry was the first to vanish, but the formation had not been broken. The number of golden spears above the Wuxian cavalry had dropped from 49 to 23. However, the intensity of the battle between the two sides did not decrease. Instead, it increased by a level. On the battlefield, the 8,000 Celestial Wolf cavalry and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry clashed against each other. Swords clashed against swords, armors clashed against armors, stellar energy vibrated against stellar energy. In a short period of time, all sorts of noises could be heard. The explosions of stellar energy, the scraping sounds of metal, the slashing sounds. There were thousands upon thousands of them, enough for anyone to clearly distinguish them, and it would even cause an intense piercing pain in their eardrums. The heavy muffled sound of the warhorses colliding with each other was enough to make everyone's heart palpitate. They felt a fear and uneasiness that came from the depths of their souls. The war between 13,000 people was even more intense and vast than the war between 100,000 people. Boom boom boom. Amidst the roiling dust, cold light flashed and warhorses neighed. One of the Wuxian horsemen gripped his invincible Wuzi steel sword and charged at a Celestial Wolf horseman. But as his sword slashed down, the savage Celestial Wolf horseman twisted and vanished like a bubble. Illusion. The Wuxian horseman immediately understood, but it was too late. Clang. A powerful force came from behind him, and the moment the Wuxian horseman lost his grip, a strange Turkic sword slashed at his back. Die. The horseman had a savage expression on his face. The Celestial Wolf illusory formation could distinguish between real and fake. If one could not distinguish the real target, it would be extremely fatal in a battle like this. Countless foes had fallen to the swords of the Celestial Wolf cavalry because of their illusions. The Celestial Wolf cavalry had relied on this strange illusion ability to defeat one powerful foe after another and create their own legends. However, when the long sword swung down, it was a weapon that could easily split an excellent weapon in half. This time, however, it felt as if the long sword had collided with a tough iron wall. Not only did it fail to slice through the other party's armor, but it was also repelled by a powerful force. How could something like this happen? An intense shock appeared on the Celestial Wolf horseman's face. The Celestial Wolf cavalry was one of the 3 legendary cavalry forces of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Their armor, weapons, and horses were all of the best quality. There had never been a case where one could not cleave through the armor of an opponent. Humph. A sneer came from the side. Even though the two horsemen did not speak the same language, there were some things that could be understood without words. Clang! Sparks flew as the Wuxian horseman swung his sword to cut off the sharp spikes on the armor of the celestial wolf cavalryman. But when his sword reached his arm, he suddenly felt a powerful resistance. The sharp Wuxia steel sword only managed to cut through half of the armor, causing blood to spurt out, but it did not succeed in cutting off his arm. What a powerful armor! With this thought, the sword-wielding Wuxian horseman understood what was going on. The armor of the celestial wolf cavalry might not be as strong as the meteoric metal armor, but it was still far superior to ordinary armor. Even the sharpness of the Wuxia steel sword would find it very difficult to cleave the celestial wolf cavalry armor in two. Gallop! The warhorse rumbled, stirring up billowing smoke and dust. In that short moment of contact, the two of them immediately intersected and separated into two. Cavalry never stopped fighting. All battles of life and death took place in that brief moment. But even so, the battle was not over. Just as that celestial wolf cavalryman managed to escape death, another Wuxian cavalryman galloped forward, his sword rising and falling. In a flash of cold light, the cavalryman's arm fell to the ground with a thud. This strike was extremely precise, landing exactly where the first Wuxian cavalryman had struck. The two seemed to be one. Aya! As the celestial wolf horseman screamed in pain, a third Wuxian horseman charged up from the rear. With a slash of his sword, blood spurted out as the celestial wolf horseman's head was separated from his body and he fell from his horse. The entire process had taken less than a second. Of the three Wuxian cavalry, two had slashed at the head while one had slashed at the neck. Their timing and teamwork had reached the pinnacle of perfection. By the time the other celestial wolf cavalry had reacted, the celestial wolf cavalryman had already been beheaded, his headless body dragged into the distance by his warhorse. But the battle was far from over. Clang clang clang. One Wuxian cavalryman after another continued to clash with the celestial wolf cavalry. The weapons and armor of the Wuxian cavalry far surpassed that of the celestial wolf cavalry, and the 10 charges 10 battles formation had also allowed them to suppress the celestial wolf cavalry. But the massive number of illusions of the celestial wolf cavalry was still effective. 16,000 real and fake celestial wolf cavalry far outnumbered the Wuxian cavalry. Most frightening of all was that even though some of the illusions had been destroyed in the fierce clash, the celestial wolf illusory formation was still producing new illusions, albeit at a much slower rate. Boom boom boom. The Western Turkic celestial wolf blades slashed down from all sides. Even though the powerful defense of the meteoric metal had reduced the power of the celestial wolf blades to the bare minimum, preventing the celestial wolf blades from falling to the blades, the stellar energy within them still managed to pierce through the armor. Squelch! One of the Wuxian cavalrymen trembled and vomited blood. In the next moment, stimulated by the fresh blood, 7 to 8 giant green wolves howled and pounced from all directions. One of the wolves even bared its teeth and leaped into the air, its body even more muscular than an adult man's as it leaped onto the back of its horse. Beast! The Wuxian cavalryman extended his meteoric metal armor into the wolf's mouth and then chopped off its massive head. Even in the moment of its death, the wolf was still baring its fangs, its face vicious as it bit down on the Wuxian cavalryman's arm. And with this delay, even more celestial wolf cavalry were charging in from all directions. Clang clang clang. Boom boom boom. One celestial wolf cavalry after another fiercely clashed with the Wuxian cavalry, the elite cavalry of the two continents constantly clashing and clashing. The power of the two formations was also fiercely clashing, and the intensity of the battle was far greater than anyone had imagined. There was no question that this was the most difficult battle the Wuxian cavalry had ever fought. The illusions of the celestial wolf cavalry had a massive effect on the Wuxian cavalry. At every moment, there were Wuxian cavalry that were distracted by the illusions of the celestial wolf cavalry, losing the initiative and falling behind. But the Wuxian cavalry still displayed their formidable fighting power. The moment any celestial wolf cavalry was discovered, countless Wuxian cavalry would immediately charge forward. In these circumstances, even with their illusions, the celestial wolf cavalry could not gain much of an advantage. Marquis, what do we do? Will General Li Sai and the Wuxian cavalry be in danger? In the distance, Xue Qianjun watched the fierce battle with deep concern in his eyes. There were quite a few around him who shared the same concern. This battle was far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. In previous battles, the Wuxian cavalry had been virtually invincible and unstoppable. No one had ever seen a battle last for so long. Furthermore, the most worrying thing was that the battle between the two armies of cavalry had stirred up a storm of dust. As far as the eye could see, there was billowing smoke and dust everywhere, rising dozens of feet into the air. Furthermore, the howling winds on the battlefield had also affected the dust to the extreme. Chapter 919. Don't panic. Wang Chang's voice was flat and indifferent, but it was imbued with a calming strength. His eyes were unperturbed as he looked forward. Believe in General Li Sai and the Wuxian cavalry. There is no force on this continent stronger than them. With their invincible Wuxia steel swords, their tough meteorite armor, the 3 layers of the halo of Dusk Stallion, and the 10 charges 10 victories formation at its peak, the Wuxian cavalry had reached an unprecedented level in both offense, defense, and dexterity. It was very unlikely that there would be an existence on this continent stronger than the Wuxian cavalry. At the very least, it could not be the Celestial Wolf cavalry. The moment Wang Chong spoke, the area around the massive banner became much quieter and more composed. "Milord, should we go and help? Shamshak's situation doesn't seem very good." The Western Turkic generals on the distant hills were also watching this battle with unease. One of de Wusseli's deputy generals took a few steps forward, a worried look on his face as he saw the churning dust. "There's no need to worry. I believe in Shamshak's abilities. The Celestial Wolf cavalry will not lose to anyone," de Wusseli confidently said. The Wuxian cavalry's formation phenomena truly were formidable, but de Wusseli believed in Shamshak's abilities even more. This trust was based on his past accomplishments. No matter how powerful a cavalry formation was, in the end, it was still a contest between people. Although the enemy's formation was formidable, it had a massive and irreparable flaw: it only had a single commander at the peak of the imperial martial realm. As long as the imperial martial Wuxian commander was killed, the formation would collapse on its own. "Shamshak, it's time for you to go." De Wusseli held his hands behind his back and looked into the distance, a sharp light in his eyes. In the distance, the battle between the Wuxian cavalry and the Celestial Wolf cavalry had reached a fever pitch. "Everyone, charge with me." Li Sai wielded his massive Wuxia steel sword as he charged through the battlefield, his rough and resounding voice like a peal of thunder, serving as a guide for all the Wuxian cavalry. The 5,000 Wuxian cavalry were divided into several dozen 100-man teams that followed behind Li Sai. In front of Li Sai's mountainous body, there was almost no one who could block his edge. Every time that iconic giant sword struck, slashed, or whipped, a Celestial Wolf cavalry would be sent flying along with their horses. Some of the Celestial Wolf cavalry were even cut in two by Li Sai. Not even the finest Celestial Wolf armor of the Western Turks could withstand a full-strength blow from Li Sai. When Wang Chong forged Li Sai's sword, he had used several jun of Hyderabad ore. Whether in weight or sharpness, it surpassed other Wuxia steel swords. Combined with Li Sai's strength, he was the only one capable of killing the Celestial Wolf cavalry with a single blow. As for the Celestial Wolf illusions, Li Sai had used the most primitive method. Roar! Li Sai raised his head to the sky and roared. Stellar energy surged from his body, sweeping out in all directions. All the illusions of the Celestial Wolf cavalry were shaken by the stellar energy and disappeared like bubbles, leaving behind only the real Celestial Wolf cavalry. Through this simple tactic, Li Sai was able to inflict grievous casualties on all the celestial wolf cavalry. Li Sai's intense battle style was shocking even to the seasoned celestial wolf cavalry, making them shudder with fear. "Kill him!" Roars came from all around as hundreds of Western Turkic celestial wolf cavalry surged forward. Even though Li Sai appeared fierce, the celestial wolf cavalry had the absolute advantage in numbers. Perfect timing. Li Sai's eyes were filled with disdain as his aura surged. He urged the Fergana horse beneath him, kicking up a trail of dust as he charged towards the celestial wolf cavalry without any hesitation. Boom! Li Sai's sword swept down like a mountain toward the celestial wolf cavalry. The celestial wolf cavalry were on a completely different level from the imperial marshal Li Sai. No matter how many celestial wolf cavalry there were, they were no match for Li Sai. Buzz! Just as Li Sai was about to kill the 5 or 6 celestial wolf cavalry around him, something happened without any warning. Li Sai's body trembled as an intense sense of danger welled up in his heart. At almost the same time, a low and sinister voice rang out in Li Sai's ears like the buzz of a mosquito. "Ha, I'll borrow your head." Although this voice was low, it was extremely clear, and it was tinged with the complacency of someone who had succeeded in their scheme. Boom! His voice hadn't even finished echoing in the air when a violent gale sprang up, and a storm of destructive energy that had been hidden for an unknown period of time suddenly appeared out of thin air within Li Sai's perception. Moreover, it struck toward Li Sai with the force of a thunderbolt. Li Sai couldn't see it, but he could hear the clattering of metal, the sound of a blade cutting through the air, causing Li Sai's body to tremble. Not good. I've been ambushed. Li Sai grimaced. He hadn't been able to sense this person's presence earlier. It was clear that this person had been intentionally concealing his aura, only revealing it now. Even more frightening was that this person had far surpassed the imperial martial realm. This was a Saint Martial expert, and a brigadier general at that. A thought flashed through Li Sai's mind. Li Sai immediately recalled the commander of the celestial wolf cavalry. But it was too late for him to react. In order to kill him, this person had disguised himself as an ordinary celestial wolf cavalry and had only revealed himself now. It was clear that he had no intention of giving Li Sai a chance to retaliate. Huang Batian. Kong Zongun. Hong Yochi. Li Sai yelled. At the same time, the stellar energy in his body exploded as he did the only thing he could do. Skunda's strength. Li Sai spread his arms, his back to Shamshak. His entire body seemed to swell, and under the influence of an invisible energy, all the Wuxian cavalry within a 50 zhang radius of Li Sai began to gather their energy into Li Sai's body. Under the shocked gazes of the countless celestial wolf cavalrymen, light gathered behind Li Sai. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black divine spirit appeared, fusing with Li Sai's body. Bang! Behind Li Sai, the black halo beneath Shamshak's feet vibrated. He gathered all the energy in his body and fiercely slashed at Li Sai's back. With a heaven-shaking boom, Li Sai and his horse were sent flying by Shamshak. Still in the air, Li Sai vomited a mouthful of blood. Boom! Li Sai landed in a cloud of dust. Although Shamshak had put all his strength into this attack, he had not been able to kill Li Sai. How could there be such a thing? Shamshak's pupils constricted and his entire body paled. With his cultivation level, dealing with a peak imperial martial expert was as easy as flipping his hand, but Shamshak had not expected that this commander of the Wuxian cavalry would be able to instantly explode in strength, directly breaking through from the imperial martial realm to the Saint Martial realm. Not only that, the armor on his body was made of some unknown material. His treasured sword could cut through hair and metal like it was metal, but when it struck the armor on his back, it didn't even leave a mark. Even with Shamshak's temperament and cultivation level, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Cutting formation. On the other side, Li Sai did not stop. Shamshak's sneak attack had dealt him massive damage. If not for the armor that Wang Chong had given him, which was made of pure meteoric metal and was imbued with a large number of toughening inscriptions that reduced the damage to a minimum, and the halo of Dusk Stallion, Li Sai would already be dead. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, the moment Li Sai gave the order, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry split into 50 groups of 100 and scattered in every direction. Where do you think you're going? Shamshak paled and immediately urged his horse to give chase. All soldiers, hear my order. Stop them. Although he didn't know what the Wuxian cavalry were doing or why they had suddenly scattered, his long experience still made Shamshak instinctively feel that something was wrong. He paid no attention to the other Wuxian cavalry, instead following closely behind Li Sai's group. But the current Li Sai was completely different from before. Bang! The Wuxia steel sword in Li Sai's hand slashed out horizontally, and Nei's horse neighed. 2 or 3 celestial wolf cavalry and their horses were sent flying by Li Sai like broken kites. Before their bodies even hit the ground, a fierce and tyrannical stellar energy, brimming with destructive and scorching energy, had already slammed into their bodies. Before these celestial wolf cavalry could even hit the ground, they had already been killed in the air. The Skanda Halo. At this moment, Li Sai finally used the supreme technique that Wang Chong had taught him. When the calamity had erupted, Wang Chong, as the apocalyptic war saint, had led the 10 generals under his command into a rampage. The Skanda Halo was the unique technique of Wang Chong's #1 general. The Skanda Halo was somewhat similar to the Death God Scythe, but it was much more powerful than the Death God Scythe that Wang Chong had used in the southwest. Only by learning the Skanda Halo and possessing the power of the Skanda could one use the Skanda formation and borrow the power of others to greatly increase one's own strength. This was somewhat similar to the mighty miracle god formation used by Wang Chong's father, but it was far less powerful. When the Battle of Talas broke out, Wang Chong had spent 2 months preparing in Wuxiang's City of Steel. During these 2 months, Li Sai had cultivated the Skanda Halo. Chapter 920. Lord Protector General, do you need me to go? As the Wuxian cavalry and the Celestial Wolf cavalry battled, a dignified voice came from Wang Chong's ear, accompanied by the galloping of hooves. Vice Protector General Cheng Qianli of the Anxi Protectorate Army had walked over to stand next to Wang Chong and look into the distance. This battle between elite cavalry had attracted the attention of many people, including the soldiers of the Anxi Protectorate Army. The commander under Dewusili should be called Shamshak. I have some understanding of him, and he should be a brigadier general. That commander of yours is probably no match for him. If necessary, I can go and help your Wuxian cavalry. General Cheng, many thanks. Wang Chong finally turned his head and smiled, but the rejection in his eyes was clear. But there's no need. The battle has already begun, and it's too late to rush over. And I believe in Li Sai's strength. No one can kill him in this battle. In a battle between experts, every second counted. Cheng Qianli knew nothing about the Wuxian cavalry, nor did he understand the tactics of the Wuxian cavalry, but Wang Chong knew that this battle was about to reach a conclusion. Moreover, the Arab assault on the first defense line was extremely fierce. Wang Chong needed a brigadier general like Cheng Qianli to hold down the fort and reinforce the first defense line. As for Li Sai, Wang Chong had absolute confidence in this future invincible great general. No matter what, as one of the best great generals of the Tang dynasty, he should not die in a battle of this level. Xue Qianjun, go and get ready. Wang Chong quickly turned his gaze back to the front. Yes, Marquis. Xue Qianjun quickly withdrew. In the distance, the battle between Li Sai and Shamshak had finally reached its climax. Rumble. The sound of hooves thundering could be heard, kicking up a cloud of dust. Shamshak's order quickly took effect. Thousands of celestial wolf cavalry closed in from all directions, constantly squeezing the Wuxian cavalry's space and blocking their path of attack. However, Shamshak had underestimated the strength of the Wuxian cavalry. The 10 charges 10 victories formation was the crystallization of countless people's blood, sweat, and tears. It was one of the 10 most powerful formations in the entire Central Plains, and it was a peak-level formation for charging warhorses. Not only had it considered the needs of an army's charge, but it had also taken into account the battlefield and the battles between top generals. All unexpected situations were integrated into the formation. No matter what the opponent did, the formation would have a corresponding response. Shamask stubbornly pursued Li Sai, constantly getting closer and closer, hoping to use this method to avoid any potential dangers. But against the cutting formation, this was of no use. In the distance, the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry did not charge as far as they usually did. After around 50 zhang, all the Wuxian cavalry immediately charged back at full speed. The 5,000 Wuxian cavalry retracted their iron claws and charged at Shamshak at Li Sai's side. At the same time, the auras of Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the other 100 great generals fused into one, transforming into an enormous black Skanda Buddha. After charging several hundred zhang, it suddenly charged back at Shamshak. Kill! Li Sai roared, and the entire sky seemed to explode. As Shamshak got closer and closer, Li Sai, in a way that defied all common sense and was completely unaffected by inertia, turned around at the same speed as Shamshak. Mountain and river reincarnation slash. Li Sai dragged his sword with both hands, becoming one with his steed as he soared into the air. He spun around, mustering all the strength in his body to slash at Shamshak behind him. Rumble. A black storm surged into the sky, and within it, a beam of sword chi shot straight up, stretching more than 200 zhang into the air as it slashed down. Under the effect of the Skanda halo, Li Sai had gathered the strength of the others to unleash his most powerful technique, the mountain and river reincarnation slash. It was completely different from before, and its power was incredible. Stone General fights the heavens. At almost the same time, the earth quaked. To Li Sai's right, Huang Batian had unhesitatingly used the most powerful technique of the Stone General. The earth split open, and countless boulders flew out. As if summoned, they gathered toward Huang Batian, instantly transforming into a 34-meter-long stone arm that smashed toward Shamshak with the weight of Mount Tai. Earth-shaking dragon. Cloud wave ghost weep. At the same time, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the others also used their most powerful techniques, man and horse becoming one as they charged at Shamask amidst the neighing of horses. Bastard! Shamshak's pupils constricted, and his entire body exploded with rage. He hadn't expected Li Sai to be so bold. He clearly knew that he was a Saint Martial Brigadier General, far stronger than him, and was clearly injured, but he still dared to turn around and oppose him. You're seeking death. Celestial Wolf Ghost Dragon Art. Without the slightest hesitation, Shamshak used the strongest technique of his life. Bzzz. The earth quaked as black energy exploded from Shamshak's body. With a shrill howl, the black energy from Shamshak's body transformed into the head of a massive black wolf with savage fangs. Boom! The wolf head split open, revealing an even larger ghost dragon wreathed in black smoke that shot toward Li Sai, Huang Batian, and Kong Xian. The Celestial Wolf Ghost Dragon Art. This was a supreme technique that only the vice-commanders of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry could learn. It had been created several hundred years ago by the most mysterious shaman priests of the Western Turkic Khaganate. After obtaining this technique, Shamshak had devoted himself to studying it. He had already cultivated it to the highest level, the ghost dragon piercing the wolf, allowing him to receive the support of the world's energy. By relying on this technique, Shamshak had killed many formidable foes. Li Sai was only a peak imperial martial expert. Even if he borrowed the power of the Skanda to reach tier 4 or 5 of the Saint Martial realm, he was still nothing to worry about. But as Shamshak was concentrating all his energy on killing Li Sai, Huang Batian, and Kong Xian, he seemed to hear the thundering of hooves. It wasn't just one or two, but tens of thousands of people charging at him. Shamshak's heart thumped, and he glanced around. This glance immediately caused Shamshak to pale in fright. This is impossible. Shamshak had believed that his order could disrupt the tactics of the Wuxian cavalry, but he now realized that he was wrong. The Wuxian cavalry had been completely unaffected by his order to stop them. The 5,000 cavalry had returned, forming 50 long ropes that were charging at him. And he was the center of these 5,000 cavalry's assault. Shamshak wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Li Sai and the others had suddenly turned around and charged at him precisely to attract his attention. Moreover, once the ultimate technique of the celestial wolf ghost dragon was used, it couldn't be withdrawn. Kill! Battle cries shook the heavens as the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry charged toward a single person like a river flowing in reverse. Translated by Hypersheep 325. Using the power of an army to kill a single person on the battlefield was something that had never happened before. Although this could be done in theory, in reality, the difficulty was unimaginably high, bordering on impossible. This was the first time anyone had ever seen cavalry accomplish such an impossible task. Boom! In a flash of light, the first wave of several hundred Wuxian cavalry was sent flying back, slamming into the enormous ghost dragon. The horses neighed, and even time seemed to stop. Under the barrage of several hundred Wuxian cavalry, the enormous ghost dragon rapidly dimmed. However, this was only the beginning. Following closely behind, the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. They continued to charge forward, and the intense collisions were as dense as rain, resounding throughout the entire battlefield. At the same time, Li Sai, Huang Batian, and Kong Xian attacked with their strongest techniques. No one could clearly see what had happened in that instant. The rolling yellow sand reached its peak as the 5,000 warhorses charged back. It was boiling and completely covered the sky, as well as everyone's vision. In that instant, everyone heard an earth-shattering roar, followed by a shrill scream. "General! Milord!" Behind the second defense line, on the distant hills, on the walls of Talas, and even farther away, everyone noticed this sight, their hearts in their throats. Duwusili, Daluan Ruozan, Dusong Mangpoj, Huishu Wazang, Qing Qinli, and even the usually indifferent Wang Chong imperceptibly creased his sword-like brows. Although he had been maintaining his composure and believed that it was impossible for Li Sai to die here, how could he not be affected in the slightest at such a critical juncture of life and death? Bang! The dust over the battlefield had not yet settled, so the outcome of this battle was still unknown. But everyone could see that the invisible barrier enveloping the 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry had completely vanished. On the ground, the illusory figures of the celestial wolf cavalry covering the entire battlefield suddenly became clear. At this moment, at least 7,000 or 8,000 celestial wolf cavalry phantoms had disappeared. All of the celestial wolf cavalry had been revealed, scattered in various places. Kill! Don't let him get away. Over there. The familiar voices of the Tang dynasty came from the distance, accompanied by the galloping of hooves. The Tang dynasty camp exploded with cheers. Even though the dust obscured the details of the battle, the destruction of the celestial wolf illusory formation was enough to show that the great Tang had emerged victorious. Chapter 921. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user. You have obtained 30 points of destiny energy. The warnings of the Stone of Destiny surged through his mind like a waterfall. 600, 800, 1,000, 2,000. In a short period of time, Wang Chong had obtained destiny energy as a reward, and the number was still rising. In this clash of top-class cavalry, Wang Chong obtained 30 points of destiny energy for each fallen Celestial Wolf Cavalry member. The stalemate had finally come to reap the harvest. Li Sai activated the Skunda Halo and used the cutting formation to heavily wound Shamshak and destroy the formation of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry. Without the support of the formation, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry, whether it was speed, strength, or dexterity, were all greatly reduced. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry of this level of strength simply could not compare to the Wuxian Cavalry. Under the pursuit of the 5,000 Wuxian Cavalry, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were immediately routed. And they suffered massive casualties. Squelch squelch. The high efficiency and tacit cooperation of the Wuxian Cavalry were fully displayed at this moment. The Wuxian Cavalry, under the support of the halo of Dusk Stallion, continued to pursue, their invincible Wuxi steel swords slashing at one spot after another. Blood spurted as one Celestial Wolf Cavalry after another fell to the hooves of the horses. At the very front of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry was a figure, his hands hanging by his sides and his body bent over the back of his horse. He was fleeing like a wolf. It was Shamshak. His face was pale, and his eyes were suffused with deep fear. If one looked carefully, one would discover that, under the charge of Li Sai's Skunda Halo and the 5,000 Wuxian Cavalry, Shamshak's aura had fallen from the Brigadier General level all the way to the Imperial Martial realm, all the way to Tier 7 or 8. He was even weaker than Li Sai. One could imagine Shamshak's situation. In Shamshak's entire life, he had never encountered such a crushing defeat. He wasn't defeated by Li Sai, nor was he defeated by Kong Xian or Hong Youqi. He was defeated by 5,000 people. In the past, Shamshak didn't even dare to think about it. He no longer dared to look back. It was already a fluke that he was able to escape with his life. It was thanks to his quick reflexes that he managed to forcefully interrupt the Celestial Wolf Demon God technique despite the backlash. In the current situation, as long as Li Sai and the others caught up and attacked, Shamshak would definitely die. That's impossible, that's impossible. How could there be such a formation in this world? Shamshak was terrified and uneasy. That strike had completely crushed his confidence. That bizarre 5,000-man battle formation had plunged Shamshak into a huge nightmare. But the crushing defeat of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry had a far greater impact and shock on another person than Shamshak or anyone else. Although he had not taken part in the battle, this battle had completely represented him, represented his honor, and represented the entire Western Turkic Khaganate. Bastard! On the high hills, Dewussili was dumbstruck by this sight, his body trembling in rage. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry were one of the 3 elite cavalry forces of the Khaganate, and they had never suffered a defeat before. Dewussili found it impossible to believe that his Celestial Wolf Cavalry would lose to the Tang dynasty. Shamshak! You useless thing! You couldn't even kill a puny Imperial martial expert. Dewussili clenched his fists, his eyes exploding with rage. Chekan Benba. Go down and tell Shamshak that if he can't defeat the Wuxian Cavalry, he shouldn't come back. Dewussili coldly said. Yes, General. The moment Dewussili gave the order, a Western Turkic officer at Tier 6 or 7, of the Saint Martial realm immediately left to carry out the order. A few moments later, he rode off on a warhorse, leaving a cloud of dust behind him. On the side, Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj couldn't help but glance at Dewussili, a hint of surprise in their eyes. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry had suffered a crushing defeat and Shamshak had been heavily injured. The two of them had believed that Dewussili would personally enter the fray, or at least summon the Celestial Wolf Cavalry back. They had never imagined that Dewussili would not do such a thing and would instead give the order to fight to the death. For the first time, the two of them sensed the tough side of the Celestial Wolf Great General, and they also understood why he had been able to sweep through the Western Turkic steppe, sweeping through all obstacles and rarely suffering defeat. Only Daluan Ruozan remained calm on the side. Long before they had begun working together, Daluan Ruozan had thoroughly investigated and understood Dewussili. This Wuxia was the true Wuxia. Prime Minister. Should I send an order to Huoba Senji? There's no need. He's already moved out. Daluan Ruozan looked forward, a faint smile on his face. Rumble. The moment Shamask and the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were defeated, the Mutri Great Cavalry that had been watching from the edge of Daluan Ruozan's field of vision finally began to charge toward the Wuxian Cavalry. In Huoba Senji's view, the moment the Celestial Wolf Cavalry were defeated, they had lost the right to challenge the Wuxian Cavalry. Everyone, hear my order. Kill. Charge. The wind was howling. Huoba Senji sat on his tall divine chariot and leaned forward slightly. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to fight. Behind him, the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry followed closely behind him in a mighty wave of heat and dust. Uzan and the Tang dynasty. The Mutri Great Cavalry and the Wuxian Cavalry. This decisive battle that had been decided by fate should have taken place long ago. Rumble. The 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry charged in unison, their aura even more powerful than the 8,000 Celestial Wolf Cavalry. At this moment, the eyes of all 7,000 people shot out sparks of hatred, as well as an intense desire to fight. Get ready. At the same time, on the other side, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, and the other Wuxian cavalry commanders immediately sensed the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Sai gave the order to recall his troops. The Mutri Great Cavalry. Li Sai's eyes narrowed as he looked at the cavalrymen charging over from afar. They were like balls of fire burning in the air. He immediately recognized them. The Mutri Great Cavalry. The strongest cavalry of the Uzan Empire, the only cavalry to be crowned with the title of Great Cavalry. The word great signified that they were the undisputed number one. Although Li Sai had never encountered the Mutri Great Cavalry, Li Sai had fought with Uzan's White Braves. All the Wuxian cavalry knew just how powerful Dian Mangban's White Braves were. At the time, the two sides had been locked in a fierce battle and had almost been completely wiped out by the ritual tools of the Bon sect. The Mutri Great Cavalry ranked even higher than the White Braves in Uzan, and if the White Braves were so powerful, then the Mutri Great Cavalry was even more powerful. Everyone, get ready. Arrow formation. Li Sai's voice resounded over the battlefield. All the Wuxian cavalry swiftly gathered, and the 10 charges 10 victories formation began to vibrate once more. 1 spear, 2 spears, 3 spears, 4 spears, a total of 49 golden spears took shape over the Wuxian cavalry, and a fierce and murderous aura surged out of them like a storm. The Skunda halo could only last for an hour. After that, Li Sai's cultivation would fall back to the imperial martial realm. Li Sai had to hurry and defeat the Mutri Great Cavalry and Celestial Wolf Cavalry so that the tens of thousands of Qixi reinforcements behind him wouldn't be routed by these two top-class cavalry forces. Rumble. Under the light of the rising sun, the earth trembled as the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry charged forward faster and faster. Great Crimson Sun Formation. Without the slightest hesitation, Huoba Senji instantly unleashed the Mutri Great Cavalry's most powerful technique. In an instant, an invisible power pierced through the air and enveloped the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Under the gazes of countless people, waves of invisible flame energy gathered from the rising sun and condensed in the air above the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. These streams of fire were tangible and tangible, instantly transforming into a massive ball of fire that engulfed all the Mutri Great Cavalry. From a distance, it looked like a moving sun had appeared over the earth, rapidly approaching. Ah! Cries of alarm came from all over the battlefield, everyone who saw this sight dumbfounded. Even the distant Celestial Wolf Great General, Wuxia, revealed a hint of shock. Very few people had not heard of the Mutri Great Cavalry, but this force of cavalry had never left the royal capital of the Uzan Empire, so almost no one in the world had ever experienced their true power. When Huoba Senji's Great Crimson Sun Formation appeared, all the Mutri great cavalry were shrouded in a dazzling light that made it impossible to open one's eyes. This was a power completely different from the Western Turks' celestial wolf illusory formation. It was tyrannical, blazing, and powerful. Damn it! I can't open my eyes at all. Li Sai, what do we do now? Huang Batian shouted from the side. Even his imperial martial cultivation had been affected, and he couldn't even open his eyes, much less distinguish between the Mutri great cavalry, let alone the others. The situation was extremely unfavorable for them. That's right. The light around them is too intense. If we can't see them, we won't be able to attack them. Kong Xian's voice came from the side, tinged with worry. Chapter 922. Ready. Everyone, listen to my orders. The Uzun's formation is similar to the Western Turks, only affecting our eyes, not our strength. In a little while, listen to my whistle. No matter how many people there are, charge straight ahead. If your eyes are affected, close your eyes and use your ears to listen. A look of determination flashed through Li Sai's eyes as he clenched his teeth and made up his mind. When enemies met on a narrow path, only the courageous would emerge victorious. The Tang dynasty had no path of retreat. If not even the Wuxian cavalry could stop the Uzun Mutri great cavalry, then if they were allowed to smoothly charge through, it would be a disaster for the entire Tang dynasty army. Li Sai had no other choice but to fight. Rumble. War horses rumbled. On the ground, two groups of cavalry charged at each other, constantly approaching each other. "Milord, what do we do? Should we join in? Work with the Mutri great cavalry to deal with the Tang dynasty?" In the distance, a group of celestial wolf cavalry had stopped and turned to their leader. With the help of the Mutri great cavalry, the celestial wolf cavalry had obtained a rare moment to catch their breath and seize the opportunity. If the celestial wolf cavalry turned around and worked with the Mutri great cavalry, they would definitely be able to defeat the Tang people. No. The eyes of the deputy commander of the celestial wolf cavalry flashed, but he quickly shook his head and refused without the slightest hesitation. The Uzun's formation halo doesn't just affect the Tang people, it affects us as well. After all, we're different from the Uzun, and we're using a different formation. If we force our way in, not only will we be of no help, we might even end up fighting the Uzun because we won't be able to tell the target apart. At the start, he had been rather confused as to why the Uzun had stopped and watched from the sidelines, but now he understood. It wasn't that they were unwilling to help, but that their formation was too special. The energy of this formation was too domineering and incompatible with the celestial wolf illusory formation, making it impossible for the two to work together. Whoosh! Putting aside the hesitation of the celestial wolf cavalry, the clear and melodious roar of a dragon resounded in the distance, drawing everyone's attention. Li Sai took the lead. Guided by the whistle, he led the thousands of Wuxian cavalry toward the Mutri great cavalry like a blazing sun with an unstoppable momentum. Of the entire Wuxian cavalry, the only one who wasn't affected by the light of the great scarlet sun formation was Li Sai, who had borrowed the power of the Skunda to advance to the Saint Martial realm. 10 meters, 8 meters, 5 meters, at this moment, even time seemed to slow down. Boom! No one could see the situation on the battlefield clearly. The great red sun formation of Uzun's army was too dazzling. Everyone could only see an army of thousands colliding with a dazzling, huge sun on the ground. In that instant, the heavens shook and the earth trembled. The force of the collision was so great that even the second line of defense in the distance trembled slightly. In the chaos, countless warhorses neighed in fright. Meanwhile, the heat waves from the battle between the two top-notch cavalrymen spread out to a radius of several thousand zhang. Within this region, all of the vegetation on the ground was scorched. Even the warhorses of the Uzun and Western Turks neighed, their eyes wide as they fled. Thud thud thud. After a short period of silence, everyone heard a continuous series of collisions that were as dense as rain. Countless warhorses collided violently in the dazzling sunlight, constantly weaving in and out of the way. Everyone, keep up. Don't get separated. Close your eyes and follow Lord General's whistle. Maintain the formation. Kill. The fierce battlefield was in complete chaos. The power of the Great Scarlet Sun formation of the Mutri Great Cavalry was on full display by borrowing the power of the sunlight. Although more than half of the battlefield was blinded by the blinding light, the Mutri Great Cavalry within the Great Scarlet Sun formation were not affected in the slightest. Boom boom boom. Massive and long scimitars were constantly raised, leaving black afterimages in the air as they accurately hacked at the bodies of the Wuxian cavalry. The weapons of the Mutri Great Cavalry were completely different from those of the ordinary Uzun cavalry. Although they were both scimitars, these scimitars were on a completely different level in terms of size, sharpness, and weight. Every strike of this gigantic scarlet scimitar was incomparably heavy and weighed more than 10,000 caddies. Even more frightening was that each slash of these scimitars carried a scorching energy that could burn meridians through the scimitars and into the enemy's body. Not even the white braves could endure this burning energy. This was one of the reasons why the Mutri Great Cavalry had become the strongest cavalry force of the Uzun Empire. Boom boom boom. Again and again, the sounds of collisions rang out from the void and resounded throughout the entire battlefield. Careful. There's something strange about their scimitars. Ah! What tough armor! General, our Wuxia steel swords can't cut through their armor. Ah! The Mutri Great Cavalry were not only difficult to deal with because of the scorching energy on their scimitars, but also because of their golden red armor. The Wuxia steel swords that the Wuxian cavalry were equipped with were so sharp that they could even cut through steel several feet thick. The Celestial Wolf cavalry were made of the finest steel materials and were imbued with a large number of toughening runes, but a single swing of the Wuxia steel swords could still cut through half their armor. But this time, the Mutri Great Cavalry were completely different. The sharp Wuxia steel swords could only leave shallow indentations of about half an inch. This was completely different from the previous battles. The armor of the Mutri Great Cavalry was much sturdier than he had imagined. I didn't think that Prime Minister would be able to forge such powerful equipment on the Uzun Plateau. On the distant hills, Wuxia narrowed his eyes and suddenly spoke. Although the Uzun's Great Scarlet Sun formation was dazzling, it didn't have much of an effect on a top-class general like Wuxia. What surprised Wuxia the most was the armor the Uzun were wearing. Wuxia's Celestial Wolf cavalry had already clashed with the Tang dynasty, so Wuxia had a deep understanding of how sharp their weapons were. General is too kind. It's just a few sets of armor, not worth mentioning. Doluan Ruozhen faintly smiled, offering no explanation. For this war, Doluan Ruozhen had made far more preparations than anyone had imagined. The Wuxia steel swords were made of Hyderabad ore from the distant Sindhu. They were incomparably sharp and could cut through metal like mud, displaying their terrifying might in the War of the Southwest. Since Doluan Ruozhen was prepared to use Wang Chong, how could he not have included the Wuxia steel swords in his calculations? The Uzun Plateau was barren and lacking in resources. In this aspect, it could not compare to the Tang dynasty. Even so, the Uzun Plateau had an advantage that no one else could compare to. In the long history of the Uzun Plateau, a large number of meteorites had fallen from the sky, landing in various parts of the Uzun Plateau. For a very long time, no one had ever paid any attention to the meteoric metal that had fallen from the sky, and no one had ever excavated it. Only when Doluan Ruozhen had ordered that all the meteoric metal scattered across the plateau be gathered up. The meteorites on the Uzun Plateau might not have been as much as Wang Chong's cousin Wang Liang, but it was more than enough to equip a force of 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Doluan Ruozhen had expended a great deal of energy to fuse the meteoric metal into the armor of the Mutri Great Cavalry and reforge them to achieve this result. This was a surprise to Wuxia's Celestial Wolf Cavalry, but to Doluan Ruozhen, it was within his expectations. Rumble. In the distance, with a heaven-shaking roar, two groups of cavalry charged forward. This decisive battle between top-class cavalry had finally come to a conclusion. The 10 charges 10 victories formation that the Tang dynasty had summoned shuddered violently. The 49 golden spears above the army had been halved, leaving only 20-some spears. The dark clouds in the sky had also vanished. But the Mutri Great Cavalry was not in a good state either. The dazzling red light around the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry had been halved. Although it was still dazzling, it was no longer as dazzling. In this battle, both sides were actually evenly matched. Not only were the formations of both sides not broken, but the number of casualties was also extremely few. Li Sai. How do we fight now? On the other end of the battlefield, Huang Batian turned and shouted. In this battle, the several thousand Wuxian cavalry had adopted the arrow formation and successfully pierced through the Mutri Great Cavalry. The meteorite metal armor that Wang Chong had equipped them with had played an important role. Just like how the Wuxia steel swords were ineffective against the Mutri Great Cavalry, the Mutri Great Cavalry's attacks were similarly incapable of breaking through their meteorite metal armor. The situation isn't good. Their stellar energy contains a scorching flame energy. We have to find a way to break their core. Kong Xian shouted. This was not the first time they had fought against the elite Uzun cavalry, so they were no stranger to the scorching flame energy that the Mutri Great Cavalry had sent into their bodies. This was no ordinary stellar energy, but the result of using other artifacts. At the triangular gap, the White Braves led by Dian Mangpoj had used a similar method. Don't worry about that for now. Let's charge a few more times and break their formation. Their weapons and armor aren't as strong as ours. With each charge, their armor will be damaged a little. As long as we keep charging, we'll be able to defeat them. Chapter 923. The Mutri Great Cavalry were much stronger and more valiant than the White Braves and Celestial Wolf Cavalry, but the Wuxian Great Cavalry were no longer the same. If the Wuxian Great Cavalry had had their current equipment and weapons at the Battle of the Triangular Gap, they would have been able to deal with the Uzun White Braves without so much trouble, not even with the heart of the Great Bon. Buzz. Following Li Sai's order, the 5,000 Wuxian Great Cavalry turned around and charged back at the Mutri Great Cavalry, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. But this time, with their backs to the sun, the feeling was completely different. Although the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry were still covered in dazzling red light, they were no longer so blinded that they couldn't even open their eyes. Moreover, with their backs to the sun, each Mutri Great Cavalry could be clearly seen in the red light. Bang! All the Wuxian Great Cavalry were invigorated by this sight, and they let out heaven-shaking cheers. Kaiyil. Kill. Armor clattering and horses neighing, the thousands of Wuxian Great Cavalry turned around and once more charged at the 7,000 Mutri Great Cavalry. Kill them. At the same time, within the formation, Huoba Senji's eyes were bloodshot, and a vicious glint shone in his eyes. With a roar, he led all of the Mutri Great Cavalry toward Li Sai and the others. In the clash just now, Huoba Senji had already gotten a feel for the strength of the Wuxian Great Cavalry. The Great Tang Cavalry was indeed ferocious, but they were not invincible. Everyone, hear my order. Gather the army. Work with the Uzun Great Cavalry and kill them. At the same time, in a place that no one was paying attention to, Chekan Benba unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the sky. The weakening of the Great Scarlet Sun formation of the Mutri Great Cavalry had not only given the Wuxian Great Cavalry a chance, but also gave the defeated Celestial Wolf Cavalry a chance to join forces with the Mutri Great Cavalry. The Tang Dynasty Cavalry were far too powerful. If one had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed that the Tang Dynasty, a kingdom of infantry, would have possessed such powerful cavalry. The nomadic Western Turks and the Uzun Empire were incapable of defeating them. In this situation, working together was the best course of action. Rumble. Countless Celestial Wolf Cavalry gathered and charged at the Wuxian Cavalry under Chekan Benba's order. A chaotic battle had begun. Pass on my order. Carry out the plan. While this three-way melee of top-class cavalry had attracted everyone's attention, behind the second defense line, Wang Chong slowly drew back his gaze and waved his arm, issuing an order. There was no way to determine the outcome of the battle between the top three cavalry forces in a short period of time, and now was the time to carry out his plan. Boom! The earth-shattering sound of war drums, with a unique metallic texture, suddenly rang out on the eastern battlefield. The sudden sound of the war drum quickly attracted the attention of all parties. Wang, on a hill in the distance, Daluan Ruozhen stood under the white yak war banner of the Ngari royal lineage, and looked over almost instinctively. Mounted on the white-hoofed shadow, Wang Chong faced Daluan Ruozhen across more than half the battlefield, a meaningful smile on his lips. Wang, seeing the smile at the corner of Wang Chong's mouth, Daluan Ruozhen's eyelids twitched violently, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. He had fought with Wang Chong many times in the southwest, so he had a deep understanding of this 17 or 18-year-old youth. He would never do something without rhyme or reason, much less speak without thinking. However, Daluan Ruozhen still didn't understand what went wrong. What did Wang Chong's smile mean? Attack. Wang Chong paid no attention to Daluan Ruozhen, his Wuxia steel sword swinging down at the tens of thousands of Uzun and Turkic cavalry. In the next moment, the earth cracked and the mountains collapsed. The tens of thousands of soldiers stationed behind the second line of defense suddenly took the initiative to charge forward. It was to the extent where even the ballista army led by Su Qi took the initiative to leave the steel defensive line. Under the protection of a group of heavily armored shield soldiers, they advanced towards the eastern battlefield at full speed. Pang! Pang! The ballista bolts boomed over the battlefield, and wave after wave of black ballista bolts left a trail of death in the air as they shot toward Uzun and the Turkic cavalry. Squish 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 squish. Kill. The countless mercenaries of the western regions charged forward like tigers descending a mountain, brandishing their sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. And this was not the only change on the battlefield. 1,000 zhang from the second defense line, Sun Jiming, Zhuang Jingping, Qi Weisi, Gao Feng, Nia Yan, and the others had originally been leading the tens of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield, but they had unwittingly distributed themselves to the eastern, central, and western sides. However, the moment the earth-shattering sound of the war drums rang out, a sudden change occurred. The group of people seemed to have received some sort of signal and began to move in unison. Marquis sent the signal. Hurry! Daluan Ruozhen still fell for it. He still can't beat Marquis. Hurry! Don't delay Marquis' operation. Lord Li Sai has already completed his mission. It's our turn now. Their eyes were bright and their spirits were roused. Daluan Ruozhen believed that he had a deep understanding of Marquis, but alas, Marquis was far more formidable than Daluan Ruozhen had imagined. In terms of strategy and tactics, Daluan Ruozhen had always been on a different level from Marquis. Rumble. On the eastern, central, and western sides of the battlefield, the great Tang armies began to spread out. If one looked down from the sky, one would see that these three armies were converging, forming a massive arc that split the more than 100,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry in two. The tens of thousands of Qixi reinforcements behind the second defense line had formed a massive trap, surrounding the 50 to 60,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry. An army of nearly 100,000 against 50 to 60,000 Uzun and Turkic cavalry, and with the threat of the ballista army, one could easily imagine the fate of this divided army. Not good. On the hill, Daluan Ruozhen paled at this sight. All of these changes happened too quickly, too quickly. He had divided Wang Chong's 40,000 cavalry into three areas, and Daluan Ruozhen had completely suppressed them. In Daluan Ruozhen's plan, he would soon be able to defeat them one by one. But now, Daluan Ruozan suddenly realized that these three groups of cavalry had not been forced apart by his army at all. From the start of the battle until now, they had been consciously dividing themselves into these three areas. Pass on my order. All the front wings, withdraw. Pass on my order to the left, right, and rear wings to attack. Do everything in your power to tear apart the Tang people's blockade. Tell Huoba Senji to abandon the Wuxian cavalry and advance at full speed to scatter the three Tang dynasty armies. In a few short moments, Daluan Ruozan had issued several orders. The winds howled over the hills, causing Daluan Ruozan's robe and hair to flutter in the wind. Daluan Ruozan looked forward, and though he appeared calm, there was a hint of anxiety in the depths of his eyes. Daluan Ruozan had been famous for many years, and he had not felt the slightest ripple in his heart when fighting against a veteran like Zhangqiu Jianqiu. But when facing Wang Chong, Daluan Ruozan had to focus and put all his strength into it. Wang Chong's art of war was completely different from that of any other general of this era. His tactics were unconstrained and unconstrained, impossible to follow. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the Wuxian Cavalry, and the Mutri Great Cavalry were three of the strongest cavalry forces in the world. They should have been the main characters of this battle, the crux to victory. But in Wang Chong's case, they had become bait to draw the attention of the army. As for the battle between the Yuzhan, the Western Turks, and the Tang dynasty cavalry, they had become the true main characters. A second ago, Daluan Ruozan had the absolute advantage, but a moment later, the situation had reversed. His army of more than 100,000 had been cut in two, and his 50 to 60,000 soldiers were at an absolute disadvantage, facing the fate of complete annihilation. This sort of thing could only happen when facing Wang Chong. Rumble. Following Daluan Ruozan's order, the entire army began to move. In the eastern part of the battlefield, the Celestial Wolf Cavalry, the Wuxian Cavalry, and the Mutri Great Cavalry were engaged in a fierce battle, but upon hearing Daluan Ruozan's order, Huoba Senji only hesitated for a moment before charging forward. Everyone, hear my order. Ignore the Wuxian Cavalry and follow me. The armor of the Wuxian Cavalry was far too tough and covered in toughening inscriptions. Its defensive capabilities were so great that the weapons of the Mutri Great Cavalry were incapable of cutting through it. This battle would not end in a short time. Moreover, there was still a chance in the decisive battle with the Wuxian Cavalry, but if the army was routed, there would be no chance at all. Hiya! Huoba Senji roared and immediately led the thousands of Mutri Great Cavalry to charge into the distance like a ball of raging fire. Great General has ordered us to go as well. At almost the same time, Chechen Benba received Dewusili's order. Dewusili and Daluan Ruozan, these two great generals, were bound together in glory and bound together in defeat. If the army collapsed and suffered too many casualties, there would be no point in fighting this war. The 40,000 some Western Turkic cavalry would not be able to accomplish anything. Moreover, many of the 50 to 60,000 trapped soldiers were Western Turkic cavalry. Gallop! It took only a few moments for Chechen Benba and his several thousand Celestial Wolf cavalry to leave a trail of dust in their wake. In such a short time, two cavalry forces had abandoned their opponents. This would have been unimaginable on the battlefield, but it was happening right now. Chapter 924. General, Marquis has succeeded. Cheers of joy resounded through the battlefield as the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and Mutri Great Cavalry received their orders and galloped toward the distant battlefield. Kong Xian couldn't contain his joy, his face brimming with excitement. The Marquis would not easily act, but when he did, it was the moment that decided the outcome of the battle. Just by looking at the anxious expressions on the faces of the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and the Mutri Great Cavalry, it was clear that their lord's plan had worked. Li Sai nodded. Only he had a rough idea of Wang Chong's plan. The others knew nothing at all. Now that the plan was complete, it was time for the Wuxian Cavalry to retreat. Everyone, hear my order. Immediately retreat. Stop the Celestial Wolf Cavalry and Mutri Great Cavalry. Don't let them ruin Marquis' plan. A harsh light flashed through Li Sai's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he took the lead and chased after the two groups of cavalry. Let's go. Huan Batian, Kong Xian, and the others followed closely behind, kicking up a cloud of dust as they galloped forward. The three halos of Dusk Stallion moved with incredible speed. The Celestial Wolf Cavalry had only traveled a short distance when the galloping of hooves could be heard. Li Sai was already leading the Wuxian Cavalry in pursuit. Stop them. Up ahead, Chechen Benba quickly turned the Celestial Wolf Cavalry around. The several thousand Celestial Wolf Cavalry turned and charged toward Li Sai's group. But this time, Chechen Benba had miscalculated. Li Sai charged at full speed, and when he was several dozen zhang away, he made a sharp turn. Completely unaffected by inertia, he drew a massive arc across the earth and left the Celestial Wolf Cavalry in the dust. In the entire world, only the Wuxian Cavalry could do such a thing. Boom! Before Chechen Benba's group could catch up, the several thousand Wuxian Cavalry had already left them in the dust, galloping toward the Mutri Great Cavalry. Damn it! After them! Chechen Benba was furious. Shamshak's strength had been greatly reduced. With his cultivation at the Imperial Martial Realm, it was simply impossible for him to use the Celestial Wolf illusory formation, while Chechen Benba was not even a brigadier general. In these circumstances, it was simply impossible for him to catch up to the 3 layers of the halo of Dusk Stallion and the 10 charges 10 victories formation of the Wuxian Cavalry. Nay! Almost at the same time that Che Kun Benba and the others were left behind by Wuxian's cavalry, on a distant hill, before Daluan Ruozhen and the others could react, a warhorse suddenly neighed, and a figure as imposing as a mountain leaped into the sky. Like a bolt of silk, it crossed over a distance of more than 10 zhang, landed on the ground outside the hill, and headed towards the entire battlefield. Dewusili. Recognizing that figure, Daluan Ruozhen could not help but frown. Prime Minister, what should we do? Dewusili has already moved out. This is completely at odds with our original plan. Huishu Huaitsong rode forward 2 paces on his horse and looked ahead, a voice in his ear. Let him do as he pleases. Daluan Ruozhen said after a few moments of silence. In his plan, the Imperial Great General would only move out at the last moment. It was not that Daluan Ruozhen was being cautious, but that the Imperial Great General had an extraordinary status. If one side moved out, the other side would inevitably do the same, ultimately leading to a battle between 2 Imperial Great Generals. Not only would this not be of much help to the battle, it would also affect many ordinary soldiers and increase the number of casualties on both sides. Thus, in a major battle, an Imperial Great General would not easily move out unless absolutely necessary. But the situation was urgent, so it was understandable that Dewusili could not sit still. Huishu Wizong, Dusong Mangpoj, the 2 of you should go as well to avoid any accidents. Daluan Ruozhen said. Behind him, Huishu Wizong and Dusong Mangpoj grunted in agreement. The 2 of them clamped their horses' bellies, and with a shrill neigh, they shot out of the hills and charged toward the battlefield like dragons emerging from the sea. At this moment, the entire battlefield began to tremble. Dewusili, Huishu Wizong, and Dusong Mangpoj had unleashed a storm of energy that instantly attracted the attention of everyone on the battlefield, including the distant Abu Muslim. The Uzan and the Western Turks have moved out, so it's about time for us to move out. Pass on my order. All soldiers, attack. Abu Muslim's hands pressed against the armrests of his throne as he slowly stood up from a golden throne in the rear of the army, an intense desire to fight exploding from his body. Rumble. At almost the same time, a powerful energy appeared on the high walls of the distant city of Talas and also exploded with fighting intent. As countless Arabs watched, a slender figure wielding a sword in both hands and clad in black heavy armor stood like a god in the southeast corner of the city of Talas, his deep eyes erupting with a light more dazzling than the sun. At this moment, the tens of thousands of Arab soldiers on the battlefield seemed to pale in comparison to this enormous energy, like fireflies before the bright moon. Gao Xianji. Abu Muslim's body trembled, and his body, which had been preparing to step forward, suddenly came to a stop. After more than 2 months of fierce battle, Abu Muslim was already very familiar with this commander of the Anxi Protectorate army. This was the first person of the Tang dynasty that he had ever admired. Even though they were enemies, Abu Muslim still respected this commander of the Anxi Protectorate army, whether it was in terms of strength or willpower. Lord Governor. A muscular Arab general stared at the governor of Iron and Blood, waiting for his decision. Inform Ziyad and have him take command. All soldiers, continue the attack. Abu Muslim said as he sat down. He had clashed with Gao Xianji more than once, and it was impossible to determine a victor in a short period of time. Moreover, although he seemed to have the upper hand on the battlefield, Abu Muslim had never been able to do anything to Gao Xianji. If Gao Xianji took the field, there would be no need to continue this battle between great generals. Because there was no meaning to it. Wuxia. Meanwhile, on the eastern battlefield, behind the second defense line, Wang Chong and his white-hoofed shadow watched as the celestial wolf great general Wuxia charged forward like a storm. With a faint smile, Wang Chong urged his horse forward. The celestial wolf great general. This was one of the best great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate. Although Wang Chong had never met him before, he had heard many legends about him. The celestial wolf great general was one of the formidable foes around the Tang dynasty. Even his martial arts and fighting style had been analyzed in the apocalyptic era, used as material for Wang Chong's promotion to war saint. I'm really looking forward to it. Wang Chong smiled as he continued to push forward. To his left and right, Su Kai and his ballista army were rapidly advancing. Volley after volley of arrows blotted out the sky. Wang Chong's strategy was quickly showing its effects. The encircled Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry were thrown into chaos, and the more than 100,000 Chishi reinforcements were rapidly killing the Uzun and Turkic cavalry. Swish swish swish. Wherever the ballista bolts passed, thousands of Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry would fall to the ground, their blood pooling and the air becoming a bloody mist. Broken weapons and halberds littered the ground. In the distance, the Wuxian cavalry led by Li Sai were also actively blocking the Mutri Great Cavalry. Li Sai did not directly attack the Mutri Great Cavalry, instead relying on the 3 layers of the halo of Dusk Stallion to reach the center of the battlefield first. Scatter them! Li Sai harshly shouted. Swinging his massive sword, he charged at the dense ranks of Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry, the rest of his army following closely behind him. Kail. Kill. Neigh. Countless warhorses neighed as Li Sai led the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry in a charge, using their advantage in speed to charge back and forth. Not even the celestial wolf cavalry were a match for the Wuxian cavalry, much less these ordinary cavalry. Screams and the rumbling of horses toppling to the ground filled the air. In just a few moments, all the Tibetan and Turkic cavalry near the dividing line had been routed. Ah! It's the Wuxian cavalry. Let's go. They're too strong. We're no match for them. Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Ah! In the face of the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry in the 10 charges 10 victories formation, the area around the dividing line fell into chaos. All of the cavalry formations were gone. In the face of the powerful attacks of the Wuxian cavalry, many of the Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry panicked and wanted to flee, but they were blocked by the endless stream of soldiers behind them. Bastard! These scoundrels are too despicable. At this moment, the most enraged were the Mutri Great Cavalry that had been obstructed by the chaotic army. The Mutri Great Cavalry commanders were fuming. They had been a little slower than the Wuxian cavalry, but this little bit had caused the Mutri Great Cavalry to lose the initiative. With at least 5 or 6 armies in front of them, the Mutri Great Cavalry would not be able to break through the encirclement of the Tang dynasty unless they killed the people in front of them. Strike! No matter who it is, kill anyone who gets in our way. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. It was Huoba Senji, who was sitting on his horse, leaning forward. His eyes flickered with a cold light. He had finally spoken at this moment. Bang! His voice was still ringing in everyone's ears when an enormous black silhouette shot forward like a bolt of lightning, slamming into a Western Turkic horseman in front of it. With a massive boom and the neighing of Ney's horse, the Turkic horseman and his horse were thrown 10-some meters into the air. Boom boom boom. Without the slightest hesitation, Huoba Senji's stellar energy surged as he and his horse charged forward. In a hail of collisions and screams, Huoba Senji threw another 5 or 6 horsemen in front of him into the air, sending them flying more than 100 feet into the air. Everyone was dumbfounded by this sudden development. Chapter 925. Bang! After a momentary silence, the panicked horseman finally realized that Huoba Senji was not joking. He even dared to kill his own people, much less the Western Turks. Everyone's faces were filled with terror as they screamed and fled in all directions. All of you, get out of the way. Anyone who disobeys will be executed. Huoba Senji's callous voice resounded over the sky. As one of the imperial guards of the Uzun Empire, Huoba Senji had a strict command over imperial great generals like Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wuzong. Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wuzong would never kill their own people, but the imperial guards were different. However, the royal city guards were different. One of the important duties of the royal city guards was to slaughter rebels and deal with the disloyal and ill-intentioned royal warriors. Throughout history, as the 4 great royal lineages of the Uzun Empire grew stronger, many people had begun to covet the authority of the Tsenpo. In order to protect the Tsenpo and the royal authority, the imperial guards had killed many Uzun people. In this aspect, Huoba Senji was fundamentally different from Dusong Mengpoj and the others. Buzz! Huoba Senji's strategy quickly began to show results. The Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry that had formed an invisible wall in front of the Mutri Great Cavalry began to flee in fear, opening a path for the Mutri Great Cavalry. This Huoba Senji truly is formidable. In the rear, Li Sai swung his sword like the wind, sending a Uzun horseman and his horse flying. He couldn't help but widen his eyes at this sight, finding the situation rather troublesome. This Huoba Senji was far more formidable than he had imagined. His method seemed callous, but in reality, he had only killed a few people. But the effect was immediate. The thousands of soldiers who had fallen into chaos immediately opened up a path for him. Everyone, follow me. However, in just a moment, a cold light flashed in Li Sai's eyes. His entire body burst forth with an intense desire to fight. He slapped the back of the horse with his left hand and immediately urged the Fergana horse to charge in Huoba Senji's direction. The Skunda halo could still last for a while. With the support of the halo, Li Sai and Huoba Senji could still fight. Go! Everyone, follow General Li. Huang Boshan's furious howl echoed throughout the battlefield. This Wuxiang village's martial arts fanatic loved martial arts as much as his own life. A fierce and powerful general like Li Sai was exactly what he admired the most. Boom! Huang Batian fiercely punched at the rock erupting from the ground and sent 2 charging Tibetan officers flying. Then, he led his subordinates forward. Kong Xian and Hong Yochi also waved their hands and led their troops forward. The Mutri Great Cavalry was extremely powerful. If they were allowed to charge over, Sun Jiming's group would surely suffer heavy casualties. Other than the Wuxiang Great Cavalry, no one could deal with them. There's no need. Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, the 3 of you withdraw for now. Just as the 3 of them were charging forward, preparing to engage in another battle with the Uzun Great Cavalry, a familiar, calm voice suddenly resounded in their ears. At the same time, everyone heard the clattering of hooves. This clattering was different from everyone else's. It was light, yet powerful. It was loose, yet rhythmic. Moreover, the interval between the clattering of hooves was very long. Such a long gap meant that the warhorse's strides were extremely long. This was definitely not something an ordinary warhorse could do. Swish! The wind whistled, and a young, determined, and dignified figure, riding on a warhorse with snow-white hooves, galloped past the corner of everyone's eyes, catching up to Li Sai who was in front of him. Marquis! Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, and the others' eyebrows shot up as they recognized the figure. Leave this Huoba Senji to me. The rest of you deal with the others. Wang Chang's nonchalant voice resounded in their ears. Before Li Sai and the others could react, Wang Chong had already shot past them like a bolt of lightning, leaving behind a majestic, resolute and not particularly muscular figure in their eyes. He charged forward with unstoppable momentum toward the blazing Mutri Great Cavalry. You're courting death. Huoba Senji's eyes narrowed. When he saw that the one charging at him was not Li Sai, but the commander-in-chief of the Qixi Protectorate, Wang Chong, his eyes blazed with killing intent and fighting spirit. It was common knowledge that Wang Chong's greatest strength lay in his military prowess, not his martial arts. For Wang Chong to charge forward at this moment, he had come at the right time. If he could kill Wang Chong, the Tang dynasty would collapse without a fight. Roar! Huoba Senji's eyes turned crimson as he roared and swung his scarlet scimitar, stirring up waves of heat. In an instant, he turned into a blazing fireball and led the Mutri Great Cavalry in a charge at Wang Chong. When all the Mutri Great Cavalry charged together like a giant wave, their momentum covered the heavens and earth, unstoppable and unstoppable. On the other side, Wang Chong drew his Wuxia steel longsword with a clang and charged at the Mutri Great Cavalry with an unstoppable momentum. Flame Elephant Rainbow. Great Yin-Yang Art. Vast Universe Art. In the blink of an eye, both Wang Chong and Huoba Senji used their most powerful techniques. The two collided fiercely in the air like two shooting stars. In front of countless eyes, a 10-meter-tall flaming elephant collided heavily with the phantoms of the sun and moon, one yin and one yang. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion was heard, and a boundless heatwave burst out in all directions. Ah! With an earth-shattering scream, Huoba Senji and the 20 to 30 Mutri Great Cavalry soldiers around him seemed to have run into an invisible and sturdy dam. Under the influence of a powerful force, they were all sent flying in all directions. Boundless flames shot through the air, but Wang Chong's clothes flapped in the wind as he remained unmoved. None of the explosions had been able to harm him in the slightest. Countless pairs of eyes that saw this scene were filled with extreme shock. Even Daluan Ruozhen was so shocked that he couldn't speak. In the War of the Southwest, he had only witnessed Wang Chong's military prowess. He had never known that his martial arts had reached such a level that not even a brigadier general like Huoba Senji was a match for him. Kill! A series of earth-shattering battle cries came from his ears. Huoba Senji's defeat had not only failed to force the Mutri Great Cavalry to retreat, but it had also stimulated the killing intent and fighting spirit of this most powerful of the Yuzhen cavalry. Rumble. Tens of thousands of the Mutri Great Cavalry charged at Wang Chong like a massive wave, waving their scarlet scimitars. This was a battle between several thousand of the strongest cavalry and a single person. No one could simultaneously deal with several thousand top-class cavalry of this level. Even Shak Shak had been knocked out of the Saint Martial realm with a single blow and was running around like a stray dog. But Wang Chong only smiled in the face of this massive wave of Mutri Great Cavalry. Buzz! With a flick of his wrist, Wang Chong caused winds to howl in a radius of 50 zhang around him. All the cavalry in this area neighed in fear as an invisible attractive force swept through the air, taking control of these warhorses and forcefully changing their trajectory. Bang! 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 A series of heavy collisions resounded through the battlefield. Before everyone's eyes, before the Mutri Great Cavalry could even get within 50 zhang of Wang Chong, they seemed to be controlled by invisible threads and crashed into each other. The warhorses whinnied and collapsed to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. In the blink of an eye, the area in front of Wang Chong was littered with corpses of the Mutri Great Cavalry. This scene was so sudden that the Mutri Great Cavalry in the rear were unable to stop in time and crashed into each other with muffled thuds. For a moment, the area 50 zhang in front of Wang Chong was in complete chaos, with almost no Mutri Great Cavalry standing. The Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. After absorbing all of Wanhapelua's energy in advancing to Tier 7 of the Saint Martial Realm, Wang Chong's control over this supreme art had also deepened. In the entire world, only Wang Chong could control the charge of all the cavalry in a radius of several dozen zhang and manipulate them like toys in the palm of his hand. The battle between one person and several thousand elite cavalry had been resolved by Wang Chong's great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. Wang Chong was completely calm and composed, not even panting for breath. But even though he had achieved this inconceivable feat, Wang Chong did not strike while the iron was hot and kill the Mutri Great Cavalry. His eyes flashed as he turned in another direction. There, a godlike figure mounted on a divine steed, his body exuding a fiery storm of energy as he shot toward him. "Brat, I didn't think you had this kind of ability. But no matter how high your martial arts are, Talas will be your burial ground today." Dewusali's voice rumbled like thunder, suffused with a lofty and domineering aura. "Nay!" Dewusali's steed neighed and reared up, charging at Wang Chong from several dozen zhang away in an inconceivable manner. In the light of the morning sun, it was impossible to see Dewusali's face, only the black silhouette of Dewusali in his steed. Chapter 926. Celestial Wolf Great General Dewusali. His fighting power was so terrifying that it surpassed biting Protector General and Sishun. Even amongst all the great generals of the world, Dewusali was considered one of the strongest experts. In his life, he had killed countless experts, and there were few great generals in Talas who could match him. Even Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji would have to fight him with all his might. In the face of Dewusali's full-strength attack, everyone on the battlefield paled. "Marquis! Careful!" In the rear, Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the others all cried out in alarm. Even farther away, Wang Yan, Wang Fu, Zhang Ke, Qing Qinli, and Gao Xianji all grimaced. "Not good. Dewusali isn't Wanhapeluo. Wang Chong is no match for him." Standing on the high walls of Talas, Gao Xianji's heart sank as he saw this sight. Although Gao Xianji had not interacted much with Celestial Wolf Great General Dewusali, he was well aware that this was one of the top 3 great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, and few people could surpass him. Although Wang Chong appeared to be so powerful that even a brigadier general like Wanhapeluo was no match, he was still not a great general. There was a fundamental difference between great generals and martial artists below the great general level. Gao Xianji had not expected Wang Chong to attack Dewusali at a time like this. Even if he wanted to stop him, it was too late. "It's over." Gao Xianji's heart sank. Wang Chong's military prowess was far more outstanding than his martial prowess. This could be seen from how he had discreetly laid down a massive encirclement right in front of Daluan Ruozan, trapping the 60,000 Uzan in Western Turkic cavalry. Wang Chong's military skills were extremely valuable to the Battle of Talas, and they were exactly what everyone needed. If Wang Chong was killed, it would be a huge blow to everyone. Buzz. Just when most of the battlefield's attention was focused on Wang Chong and Dewusali, and everyone believed that Wang Chong's life was at stake, suddenly, everyone heard a burst of laughter. "Dewusali! It's still too early for you to say that." Boom! There was a massive boom that caused the world to sway. In the distance, Wang Chong stood motionless in the face of the rising sun, his black back exuding a storm of energy that was completely different from his thin and small body. Beneath his feet, massive war halos began to vibrate, resonating with the halos of Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and the 5,000 Wuxian cavalry, all of these halos showing signs of fusing together. Bzzz. A massive boom resounded in everyone's ears, and in the blink of an eye, a four-armed black-armored god more than 40 meters tall rose from the ground, wielding a massive Vajra pestle made of stellar energy that he swung like a storm at Wuxia. Bang! Wuxia had put all his strength into this attack, but Wang Chang's pestle had sent him and his horse flying into the air. Boom! He crashed to the ground in a cloud of dust. Boom! Everyone was dumbstruck by this sight. Huishu Wuzong, Duso Mangpoj, and even the distant Daluan Ruozhen were dumbstruck. They were no strangers to this supreme art that Wang Chong had used. In the southwest, Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, had also used this supreme art to stop the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. No one had expected that Wang Chong would use the same supreme art, but the god Wang Chong had summoned was completely different from the one Wang Yan had used. The God King Yama formation. On the walls of the distant city of Talas, Gao Xianji's mind trembled as he stared at that massive four-armed god, a thought flitting through his mind. The Central Plains had a total of 10 powerful God King formations, including the mighty Miracle God formation and the Vajra God formation that had already appeared in the southwest. The God King Yama formation was one of them. These 10 formations required the strength of everyone, and all of them were supreme arts that were extremely difficult to cultivate. Moreover, because it required a formation diagram, extreme coordination, the nature of the martial art, and all sorts of other harsh conditions, even the most formidable martial artists would find it very difficult to succeed in cultivating them. In terms of might, the God King Yama formation was ranked in the top 4 among the 10 great formations. However, the difficulty and requirements to cultivate it were also extremely high. In fact, it even surpassed the mighty Miracle Deity formation and the Vajra Deity formation. When Gao Xianji had met the Holy Emperor when he had been promoted to General of the Right Imperial Guard, he had also asked about it. The information he had received was that the God King Yama formation and some other formations had been bestowed to some of the founding families in the early days of the current dynasty. Later, these families had declined, and there was no one in their families who was qualified to cultivate formations. Gradually, the formation was lost over the long years. Even the founding families did not know where the formation diagram had gone, let alone the imperial family. In the Tang dynasty, there were even rumors that the formation diagram of the God King Yama formation had rotted and crumbled over the long years. Gao Xianji had never imagined that this legendary lost technique would appear in Wang Chong's hands. What the hell is going on? Gao Xianji muttered to himself. It would be fine if Wang Chong had used his father's mighty miracle god formation, but he had used a completely different God King formation. This was not something that could be explained by a family of ministers and generals. But no matter what, Wang Chong's survival was the most important thing. Lu Shi. Take over from me. Gao Xianji suddenly said. Yes, Your Excellency. A respectful voice came from behind him. Gao Xianji did not say much and strode down the tower. In the distance, in the center of the eastern battlefield, the battle between Wang Chong and Wuxia had shocked everyone. This was especially true for the massive four-armed black-armored celestial god. Everyone who saw it was dumbfounded, and their minds were shaken. Under the feet of this gigantic heavenly god Yama, all of the cavalrymen were as tiny as ants. Nay. The warhorses neighed as if they had been given a huge fright. The charging Mutri great cavalry retreated in panic, their eyes filled with terror. Amidst the neigh, one of the Mutri great cavalry lost control of his horse and crashed into the God King Yama. Rumble. There was a flash of black light, and a huge foot stomped down from the sky. The Mutri great cavalry and his horse were instantly crushed into a bloody pulp. Even the indestructible armor forged from meteoric metal could not withstand the terrifying power of the God King Yama, and it was twisted and deformed by a single stomp. God King Yama really did it. At this moment, Wang Chong and his horse floated in the air. Rings of light vibrated and rotated around his body, resonating with the tens of thousands of Wuxian cavalry's halos around him. There was another powerful and majestic power that contained the power of heaven and earth. With him as the center, it permeated the entire God King Yama. At this moment, Wang Chong was the God King Yama. The God King Yama was him. For the first time in this world, Wang Chong was using the power of an imperial great general. The God King Yama. Even though this God King Yama was not complete. When the calamity of the Central Plains had descended, all martial arts had been gathered in one place. Otherwise, Wang Chong would never have been able to see the long-lost God King Yama formation. The formation diagram had been damaged at the time, and even though those seniors and countless martial arts experts had tried to patch it up, including Wang Chong himself, in the end, the God King Yama formation had only been restored to 60 to 70% of its original power. Wang Chong had chosen this damaged God King formation for a very simple reason. Although this incomplete Empyrean God Yama formation only had 60 to 70% of its power, compared to the mighty miracle deity formation and the Vajra deity formation, which required tens of thousands of people to use and required a high level of familiarity and practice over a long period of time, this simplified version of the Empyrean God Yama formation had much lower requirements. It only required 4,000 to 5,000 people to use, and the time required was also greatly reduced. Of the 10 God King formation diagrams, this was the one most suitable for Wang Chong to learn in time for the Battle of Talas. Bastard! On the other side, a cold and furious voice came from the ground. The celestial wolf Great General de Wuxia landed 10 some zhang away from Wang Chong, his face extremely gloomy. Wang Chong's pestle had been a powerful blow, but de Wuxia appeared to be completely unharmed. But even so, that pestle had ignited de Wuxia's rage. I truly underestimated you. I didn't think that you would also know a God King formation. Killing intent surged in de Wuxia's eyes as he gripped the black halberd in his right hand, his knuckles crackling. But even so, you will still die. As he spoke, an azure stream of energy surged out of de Wuxia's body and into the sky. Stellar energy condensed above de Wuxia's head, transforming into 7 stars. The centermost star was shockingly the celestial wolf star. The moment these 7 stars appeared, the cape on de Wuxia's back flapped in the wind, and his aura suddenly swelled, becoming incomparably powerful. Awu. Chapter 928. Cloud movement in all directions, heavenly wolf swallows the stars. De Wuxia calmly sat on his horse and instantly attacked with his halberd. Rumble. Light and shadows intertwined in the void as clouds gathered in all directions. As de Wuxia's halberd moved, it carried boundless destructive energy and shot towards Wang Chong like a bolt of lightning. In that instant, the void trembled as the shrill howl of a wolf resounded. De Wuxia's halberd transformed into a gigantic wolf head the size of a mountain. As it howled, it carried a torrent of destructive energy and ruthlessly smashed towards Wang Chong. In the face of this powerful attack from de Wuxia, everyone couldn't help but feel as insignificant as ants. It was as if they were facing a gigantic mountain that pierced through the sky. This kind of feeling was enough to make every cavalry on the battlefield tremble in fear from the depths of their souls. It was as if they were ants facing the gods. Boom! Just as everyone was filled with fear, de Wuxia had already become one with his horse. Like a flood dragon, he soared into the sky above everyone's heads and charged towards Wang Chong with lightning speed. Good timing. When Wang Chong saw this scene, he didn't dodge. Instead, his 4 steel-like giant arms converged and swept up 4 torrents of energy that blasted towards de Wuxia from 4 different directions. Wherever the giant iron fist of the heavenly god passed, the air blurred. Even time and space distorted as black traces appeared. Under Wang Chong's control, this giant heavenly god Yama didn't seem clumsy at all. Instead, it was agile and nimble. Every single strand of energy within the giant heavenly god's body was controlled by Wang Chong with great precision. Without terrifying control and mental strength, it was impossible to achieve this. Boom! Under the shocked gazes of countless people, Wuxia became one with his horse and collided heavily with the heavenly god Yama that Wang Chong had transformed into. Kacha! An earth-shattering sound rang out. In that instant, even the sky seemed to have split open. Endless waves of energy swept out in all directions. Ah! Panicked shouts could be heard as some nearby Tibetan and Turkic horsemen were tossed into the air along with their horses by the fierce winds, tumbling through the air like fallen leaves. When the others saw this scene, their faces were filled with fear and they all retreated. A battle between great generals was no trifling matter. Carelessly getting caught up in it would only result in death. In the sky, the battle between Wuxia and Wang Chong was still going on. Bang! Bang, bang. Under countless incredulous gazes, Wuxia rode on his warhorse. His four hooves did not touch the ground at all. He repeatedly turned around in the sky, attacking Wang Chong without stopping. Every time his body was about to fall, there would always be an invisible force that pulled his body up, so that Wuxia could always attack Wang Chong repeatedly. It was as if there was an invisible chain that linked him to the God King Yama that Wang Chong had transformed into. The Celestial Wolf's Divine Procession. This was one of the three supreme divine arts of the Western Turkic Khaganate. It was rumored that it had been created by a legendary Turkic shaman. When this supreme art was used to its peak, one could be like Wuxia, soaring into the air with their horse. Their hooves did not even need to touch the ground as if they could fly. Too powerful. He can actually fly. How could this be? This is the strength of a top-class great general of the Western Turkic Khaganate. The abilities Wuxia displayed left Li Sai, Huang Batian, Kong Xian, Hong Youqi, and all the other generals of the Tang dynasty deeply stunned. They had heard that Wuxia was the Celestial Wolf Great General of the Western Turks, ranked third in the Western Turkic Khaganate, and had even defeated in Sishan, but only now did they understand just how terrifying his strength was. It was like the laws of space didn't exist at all. This sort of terrifying fighting power was enough to make even great generals of the same level feel the aura of death. At this moment, everyone suddenly understood why even someone as powerful as Biting Protector General in Sishan had lost to him. He might not have the intelligence and schemes of Daluan Ruozan, but his fighting power was enough to disregard many of them. This was a formidable existence who could rely on his own strength to alter the course of an entire battlefield. Boom! 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 Explosions resounded in everyone's ears. Only by truly facing him would one be able to sense just how powerful Wuxia's pressure was. Wuxia and Wang Chong's God King Yama were of different sizes, but the result of this battle was that Wang Chong's God King Yama was being forced back again and again. The Celestial Wolf Great General truly is powerful. Wang Chong was using all his skills to fiercely battle with Wuxia. Wuxia's strength was something that even the elders of the Tang dynasty had praised and deeply acknowledged. In terms of pure strength, he was probably even more formidable than the Big Dipper Great General Geshu Han. He was publicly acknowledged as one of the top-class great generals of the continent. There were very few great generals who could stand on equal footing with him. But Wang Chong showed no fear in this battle. On the contrary, he was extremely excited. To personally exchange blows with the Celestial Wolf Great General Wuxia was something that Wang Chong had never even dared to dream of in his last life, nor had he ever had the chance to do so. To any martial artist who had survived the calamity, exchanging blows with such a dangerous great general was something to be deeply proud of. Wuxia's fighting style was fierce, swift, straightforward, and lethal. Each move exuded the aura of a fatal blow. There were only a handful of people on the battlefield who could stop the Celestial Wolf Great General. This was also why Wang Chong had personally come to stop Wuxia. Boom boom boom. Wang Chong did not use any of his supreme techniques, nor did he use the great yin-yang art or the vast heaven-earth art. Instead, he used the techniques and theories he had learned in his last life to deal with Wuxia. 70% of the God King Yama's strength was only enough to push Wang Chong from Saint Martial Tier 7 to the level of a low-level great general. There was still a considerable gap between him and a veteran great general like Wuxia. But Wang Chong's moves were simple and ingenious, each of them perfectly nullifying Wuxia's earth-shattering strength and techniques. Before Wuxia had even attacked, Wang Chong had already predicted what his next move would be. Thus, while the battle appeared to be fraught with danger and Wang Chong seemed like he could be heavily injured by Wuxia at any moment, in reality, Wang Chong was as steady as Mount Tai, not in the slightest danger. The battle between the two seemed intense, but it was impossible to determine a victor in a short period of time. Rumble. As Wang Chong and Wuxia fiercely battled, on the eastern side of the battlefield, the neighing of warhorses could be heard as two powerful energies rapidly approached. Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wuzong, two Wuzong great generals had also arrived on their divine steeds. Their gazes quickly locked onto Wang Chong. Both Dusong Mengpoj and Huishu Wuzong had suffered major losses at the hands of Wang Chong, so they had a deep understanding of his terrifying skill in the art of war. Forget about the others. Kill him first. Huishu Wuzong fiercely said. Before his voice faded away, the earth rumbled and the sky collapsed. A huge golden Buddha rose from the ground and appeared on the battlefield. Vairocana Buddha Golden Body Mantra. Without the slightest hesitation, Huishu Wuzong used his strongest technique. Although he was an imperial great general, Huishu Wuzong's desire to kill Wang Chong far surpassed anything else. As long as he could kill Wang Chong, Huishu Wuzong didn't care about his status. Boom! The moment Huishu Wuzong transformed into his Vairocana Buddha, he charged at Wang Chong with incredible speed. At almost the same time, Dusong Mengpoj transformed into a massive black Buddha and charged at Wang Chong. Three illustrious imperial great generals had disregarded their status and chosen to kill Wang Chong at the same time. This was an unprecedented situation, and it was enough to show just how much the Uzun and the Western Turks wanted to kill Wang Chong. Buzz! Just when it seemed like Wang Chong was about to fall into a perilous situation and be surrounded, the earth quaked and an enormous energy erupted from behind Wang Chong. Huishu Wuzong, your opponent is me. You're an imperial great general, but you're using numbers to bully me, 3 against 1. Don't you think that this is an unfair victory? Anshi Vice Protector General Cheng Qianli's voice came from behind Wang Chong, and before his resounding voice could fade away, a mountainous figure brushed past Wang Chong's shoulder, blocking Huishu Wuzong's path. The Supreme Desolation God. In front of Wang Chong stood an enormous god, its body exuding a hazy azure energy. Its muscles bulged like dragons, brimming with power. But the most eye-catching thing was the thick black chains on his body. Those chains were wrapped around the ancient armor, making the Horned Supreme Desolation celestial god look extremely mighty and powerful. Not even Wang Chong had imagined that this Vice Protector General of the Anshi Protectorate could use this powerful god formation. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, Cheng Qianli's Supreme Desolation God and Huishu Wuzong's Vairocana Buddha began to fiercely battle. Great General Dusong, long time no see. Your opponent is me. At almost the same time, a harsh and dignified voice came from Wang Chong's other side. There was no earth-shaking momentum or the appearance of an enormous god, only a slender figure shooting forward. With a single slash of his sword, he forced Dusong Mengpoj's Black Buddha back several steps and blocked his path. Gao Xianji. Chapter 929. You've come at the perfect time. Let us decide the victor this time. Dusong Mengpoj's cold and firm voice quickly resounded over the battlefield. Gao Xianji said nothing, only used his actions to answer. Boom! Bolts of energy shot out as Gao Xianji cleaved through the air, the vast sword chi pushing Dusong Mengpo's black Buddha Tensum Zhang back. But with a howl and a boom, Dusong Mengpo once more lunged forward. For a moment, the battlefield was filled with booms and shockwaves. Wang Chong against Dewusili, Qing Qianli against Huishu Wuzang, Gao Xianji against Dusong Mengpo. The battlefield of Talas was instantly embroiled in a chaotic battle between 6 great generals, rarely seen on the continent. The battlefield was flooded with destructive torrents of energy. But it was still far from over. Roar! In the distance, a third golden-armored god appeared on the first defense line with a heaven-shaking roar. Its massive body caused the countless Arabs behind the first defense line to retreat in fright. Countless warhorses whinnied, their eyes wide in fear, some of them even throwing off their riders. But Wang Yan, in his mighty miracle god form, did not take action. He only stared at the distant Abu Muslim, intimidating the Arab soldiers. In this battle, there were only 4 people on the Tang dynasty's side who could raise their strength to the great general level, and Wang Yan was one of them. A battle between great generals was no trifling matter. Intimidation was far more important than actual combat. This was why Wang Yan did not take action. The battle on the battlefield was getting more and more intense. While Wang Chong and Dewusili were battling, Li Sai and the others were also battling with the Mutri Great Cavalry. All the Yuzhan and Turkic cavalry had circled around the area where the 6 great generals were fighting and were charging at the line that Sun Jiming and Zhuang Jingping had formed. Meanwhile, Xue Qianjun and Su Ke were leading an army of nearly 100,000 soldiers in tightening the encirclement and reaping the lives of the Yuzhan and Western Turks. Boom! 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 Thick ballista bolts rumbled through the air, and countless Yuzhan and Turkic soldiers howled as they fell in droves in front of Su Ke's ballista army. In a few short moments, 20 to 30,000 Yuzhan and Turkic soldiers had fallen on the battlefield, their blood flowing like rivers. Brat! I don't believe that I can't kill you today. In the sky, Dewusili's furious voice thundered over the battlefield. His massive black steed whinnied through the air like a bolt of lightning, attacking Wang Chang's god King Yama from every angle. Countless thunderclouds formed of stellar energy shrouded the sky and accompanied the divine steed. Dewusili sat astride his black steed amidst the thunderclouds, the black halberd in his hand thrusting and thrusting. It seemed as light as a feather, but each strike carried with it a mountain-shattering force. As a top-class great general, Dewusili's every move was extremely refined, without the slightest excess, and each strike was lethal. But no matter how fast Dewusili was, how crafty the angles of his attacks were, or how powerful his attacks were, they were all blocked by Wang Chang's 4 God King Yama arms. Dewusili had never encountered such a thing in his life. Wang Chong clearly only had the strength of a great general, the most elementary level, and was still quite a distance away from him. Dewusili had even defeated Biting Protector General and Sishun, let alone an elementary great general like him. But even though Dewusili had used all of his techniques, he was still unable to defeat this up-and-coming youngster. Wang Chang's strength was not very high, but each of his attacks was perfectly timed, striking at Dewusili's weakest points. There were times when Wang Chong would seal off a single attack before he could even use it. Dewusili was known as the Celestial Wolf Great General, one of the top 3 great generals of the Western Turkic Khaganate, a powerful existence that even Ishbara Khagan relied on. But in this small battle, he felt like he was being suppressed and unable to use his full strength. Boom boom boom. Destructive energy exploded in the air. Dewusili was like a human-shaped behemoth, his fighting techniques so superb that they could make an ordinary great general collapse. But time and time again, Wang Chong was able to easily neutralize them. Dewusili, it's not that I'm looking down on you, but you don't have the ability. Wang Chong's soft laughter rang out in Dewusili's ears. In his battle with Dewusili, Wang Chong had always been at ease. Brat, you're truly seeking death by provoking me. Dewusili was even more furious at Wang Chong's words. Whether it was age, seniority, or experience, Dewusili was not someone that a rising star of the Tang dynasty like Wang Chong could compare to. Dewusili had made a name for himself very early on, and his strength was publicly acknowledged to be formidable. He had long since been able to suppress many great generals. Whether it was the Tang dynasty's tiger of the empire Zhangqiu Jianqiu, the Big Dipper great general Geshu Han, or biting protector general and Sis Han, they were all a little lacking. In the entire Tang dynasty, the only people who could suppress him were Anong protector general Zhang Shougui and the crown prince's junior guardian, the former Tang dynasty war god Wang Zhongxi. If Wang Chong had not defeated Daluan Ruozhen in the southwest, defeated Dusong Mengpoj at the Triangular Gap, and killed the Western Turks' Black Wolf Yabgu Agud Ilan, Dewusili's seniority would have never placed Wang Chong in his eyes. To Dewusili, Wang Chong was a true, nameless pawn. Then go ahead and show me your true strength. Wang Chong's loud voice resounded over the battlefield. Rumble. Wang Chong's God King Yama swung one of its massive black arms to block Dewusili's heaven-shattering halberd. At the same time, the God King Yama's other arm swung the Vajra pestle horizontally, stirring up a flood of energy that smashed into Dewusili's Turkic steed. The God King Yama's four arms, which could be used for both offense and defense, were on full display at this moment. Of the 10 gods, the God King Yama was the most suitable to deal with Dewusili. Buzz. Although Dewusili was furious, he was forced to retreat by Wang Chong, his horse and man sliding more than 20 zhang through the air. Even Wang Chong couldn't help but inwardly praise the Western Turk celestial wolf's divine procession. Truly was profound. This ability to allow a man and horse to hover in the air was almost divine. Even Wang Chong felt a little envious, let alone the others. Alas, when the calamity had come, many martial arts had been gathered together, but the celestial wolf's divine procession art was not one of them. The celestial wolf's divine procession art did not actually allow one to fly through the air. It only allowed one to soar higher and stay in the air for a longer period of time. It was more suited for battle, and part of the ability to soar through the air relied on borrowing the opponent's strength. But even so, the celestial wolf's divine procession art was still marvelous and extremely powerful. The unpredictable changes of the celestial wolf's divine procession art, coupled with Dewusili's valiant strength and supreme fighting skills, were enough to make any great general feel a deep apprehension. If Wang Chong had not gone to block the celestial wolf great general Dewusili, anyone else would have already been heavily injured or killed by Dewusili. The new waves of the Yangtze River push on the old. To think that I thought that the imperial court didn't have enough strength to send him, but now it seems that it was a good thing that they sent him. Anyone else would have found it very difficult to stop Dewusili, even if their military prowess was on par with his. Although Gao Xianji was fiercely battling with Dusong Mengpoj, his eyes had been focused on Wang Chong the entire time. Wang Chong's military prowess was like the noon sun, but very few people knew of his martial prowess. Gao Xianji had originally believed that Wang Chong was no match for Dewusili and that fighting him would be fraught with danger, but now, he had completely calmed down. His military prowess was formidable, and so was his martial prowess. Gao Xianji, if you have time to worry about that new Qixi Protector General, you should worry about yourself. In this battle, the Tang dynasty's defeat is assured. From now on, from Longxi to the Tsong Mountains, everything will belong to our Uzun. Just as these thoughts flashed through Gao Xianji's mind, a slightly angry voice came from up ahead. As the voice spoke, Dusong Mengpoj's black Buddha form swung a massive palm at Gao Xianji's head with the momentum of a thunderbolt. Even though this was not his first time clashing with Gao Xianji was still paying attention to Wang Chong. This infuriated Dusong Mengpoj, who was also an imperial great general, to no end. A fool's ravings. After this battle, I'd like to know if the Uzun still has the strength to fight in the north. Of the 4 royal lineages of the Uzun Empire, only 2 will remain. Gao Xianji faintly smiled. You. Dusong Mengpoj was infuriated. The black Buddha palm suddenly sped up and slashed at Gao Xianji. Buzz! In the face of Dusong Mangpo's astonishing attack, Gao Xianji's face was as calm as an ancient well. He slightly raised his sword, and the air rumbled as a majestic bolt of sword chi slashed through the air, as heavy as a mountain. Boom! The air exploded, sending shock waves of energy in all directions, throwing the corpses on the ground into the air. But in the center of the storm, Gao Xianji stood unmoving while Dusong Mangpo's black Buddha took 2 steps back. Dusong Mangpo's pupils constricted at this sight. Without another word, he lunged forward once more. At the same time, Wuxia Wuzong also lunged forward. Wuxia Wuzong's Vairocana Buddha glowed with a blinding light, its moves bold and unyielding, each palm leaving a massive hole in the ground. Wuxia Wuzong was quite experienced in dealing with the supreme techniques of the God formation. In battle, each move was calm and unhurried, but each step was pressing. But the supreme desolation God of the Anxi Protectorate Army's garrison formation was a completely different experience. Chapter 930. A massive chain of stellar energy slithered through the air, wrapping around the ankle of the Vairocana Buddha, but Wuxia Wuzong snapped it with a palm. In the blink of an eye, a second chain of stellar energy wrapped around Wuxia Wuzong's wrist, and then a third, a fourth. Wuxia Wuzong's fists were like lightning bolts, exploding and burning these chains one by one, and then he stepped forward, pressing toward the supreme desolation God. Vairocana Burning Body Mantra. Get out of my way. Wuxia Wuzong's Vairocana Buddha brought his palms together, and a blazing golden flame exploded between his palms like the sun. Roiling waves of energy stirred up fierce gales that swept through the world, but this blazing attack was forcefully scattered by several punches from the supreme desolation God. Great General Wuxia, with me here, you should give up on your wishful thinking. No matter what, I won't let you cross the line. Qing Qianli's righteous voice resounded through the world. From the very start, Wuxia Wuzong had been steadily pressing in on Wang Chong, and Qing Qianli naturally knew what he was planning. Wang Chong was probably a thorn in the side of all the great generals of the Yuzhan Empire. Whether it was Wuxia Wuzong or Dusong Mangpo, both of them were doing everything they could to work with Dewusili to kill Wang Chong. But no matter what, Qing Qianli would never let them get what they wanted. Wang Chong had led more than 100,000 soldiers from Qixi to reinforce the Anxi Protectorate Army. If Wang Chong was surrounded and killed in front of their eyes, it would be a disgrace to the Anxi Protectorate Army. Thus, even though there was a slight gap between him and Wuxia Wuzong, Qing Qianli had never retreated a single step, doing his utmost to stop Wuxia Wuzong. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, the two of them were once again locked in a fierce battle. At the same time, in the middle of the battlefield, the battle between Wang Chong and Dewusili had reached its climax. In mid-air, in all directions, Dewusili's attacks were exploding. Sun-devouring heavenly wolf. Heavenly wolf swallows stars. Sky wolf collapsing mountain. Dewusili and his horse became one, constantly changing in the sky. All kinds of powerful secret arts were displayed to the extreme by him. But no matter what secret art he used, Wang Chong was always able to predict his movements and block his attacks. Dewusili had descended from the hills and personally entered the battlefield. His original goal had been to stop Wang Chong's ambush and rescue the 50 to 60,000 Yuzhan and Western Turkic cavalry, but now, Dewusili had forgotten his original goal. There was only one thought in his mind: kill Wang Chong. Bastard! I don't believe that I can't kill you today. Celestial wolf strikes the moon. Dewusili's furious laughter resounded through the sky. As countless people watched, Dewusili's divine steed shot forward like a shooting star toward the god King Yama. But there was a massive boom. Boom! Dewusili's full power attack was nullified by Wang Chong. Dewusili had only managed to use 70% of his attack's power before it dissipated. Dewusili, it's not that I don't believe you, but you don't have time. Wang Chong smiled, his expression relaxed. As he spoke, he swung the Vajra pestle at Dewusili. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, Dewusili's body moved to the side, easily dodging Wang Chong's attack. Although his strength was greatly reduced against Wang Chong, Dewusili's strength was still there. Wang Chong's attacks were still very difficult to threaten the Celestial Wolf Great General, who was ranked third among the Western Turks. Brat, what do you mean by this? In the sky, Dewusili's pupils constricted as he glared at Wang Chong said. Ha! Wang Chong only chuckled, offering no explanation. His gaze swept past Dewusili and toward the distant hills. In the next moment, as if responding to his gaze, a resounding yak horn sound broke the silence and resounded throughout the battlefield. The sound of the horn caused Dewusili's face to freeze, an indescribably strange expression on his face. Nearby, Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj also showed subtle changes on their faces. This was the horn for the army to retreat. Although the Uzun yak horn sounded the same to others, it sounded completely different to Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj. This was a signal for them to retreat, and it had been issued by Daluan Ruozan. Great General! Let's retreat for now and fight with them in the future. Huishu Wuzong said to the Celestial Wolf Great General Dewusili in the sky. Dewusili said nothing, his face constantly shifting. He had not expected Uzun's horn to retreat at all. But while Dewusili was still hesitating, the thousands of Uzun and Western Turkic soldiers below him had already begun to react. Bzzz. For a few moments, the entire battlefield was eerily still, and then everyone began to retreat like a tide to the east of Talas. Boom! Boom! Two explosions rang out as Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj on Dewusili's left and right sides simultaneously pushed back their opponents, forcing them out of the battle and covering the retreat of the army. Great waves immediately appeared in Dewusili's mind. Although he was extremely unwilling, Dewusili could only choose to retreat at a time like this. Wang Chong was nothing in his eyes, but with Qing Qianli and Gao Xianji, three great generals of the Tang dynasty working together, he would not be able to deal with them. Without Huishu Wuzong and Dusong Mangpoj's cooperation, he would never be able to deal with Wang Chong with peace of mind. Retreat! Floating in the air, Dewusili waved his hand and finally gave the order to retreat. Rumble! The hesitant Western Turkic cavalry immediately began to retreat. Wang Chong, should we continue the pursuit? Gao Xianji had not pursued Dusong Mangpoj after he had retreated. Instead, his body swayed and he appeared at Wang Chong's side, looking into the distance as he spoke. Gao Xianji's status and seniority in the army were far greater than Wang Chong's. By asking Wang Chong this question at a time like this meant that in terms of strategy, tactics, and strategy, Wang Chong had won Gao Xianji's acknowledgement. There's no need. Wang Chong faintly smiled, unconcerned. Let them go. They haven't lost yet, and with Dewusili's trio in the rear, we won't be able to get much of an advantage. Moreover, strategically speaking, we've more or less achieved our goal. Let them retreat. Daluan Ruozan truly was formidable. While Wang Chong was fighting with Dewusili, he was still commanding his army, and he had even succeeded in tearing apart Wang Chong's trap and rescuing the Uzun and Western Turkic cavalry. But even so, Wang Chong's Chishi reinforcements had killed more than 40,000 elite Tibetan and Turkic cavalry, and the howls of wolves could be heard all over the battlefield. The corpses of vultures rained down from the sky like a torrential rain. To the Uzun and Western Turkic army of 120,000, this was undoubtedly a massive loss, and they only had 70,000 some soldiers left. Even if Daluan Ruozan was a man of great learning and wisdom, this army of 70,000 would have very little room to maneuver. In terms of strategy, Wang Chong had achieved his goal. His retreat was truly timely. Otherwise, we would have been able to kill even more Uzun and Western Turks and deal them a heavy blow. Qing Qianli walked over at this moment, his heart filled with regret as he watched the retreating Uzun and Western Turkic army. If he doesn't want to retreat, it's not up to him. Wang Chong indifferently said, not bothering to explain. Wang Chang's bane of the battlefield halo had been working this entire time, consuming the strength of Dewusili and Huishu Wuzang. If they did not retreat now, they would find it very difficult to do so after a while. Let's go. The only ones left are the Arabs. Without another word, Wang Chong, in his God King Yama form, immediately headed for the first defense line while issuing another order. Li Sai, order the army to retreat and return to the second defense line. At the same time, coordinate with the other armies in attacking the Arabs. This general will go. Li Sai's voice quickly resounded over the battlefield. The first to react was the ballista army led by Su Ke. He had been in the rear with more than 1,000 ballista teams, so he had been the first to reach the first defense line. When the two ballista armies joined together, the power of nearly 3,000 ballistae was on a completely different level. Boom boom boom. Wave after wave of ballista bolts flew through the air like locusts, their plopping echoing over the battlefield. In the blink of an eye, 6,000 to 7,000 Arabs had fallen. 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves. Once the numbers reached a certain level, the ballista army's lethality skyrocketed. The appearance of Wang Chong, Qing Qianli, and Gao Xianji instilled fear in the hearts of the Arabs. Countless warhorses neighed and began to flee. Bong bong bong. The beating of war drums came from the rear of the Arab army. Before Wang Chong's forces had even officially arrived on the battlefield, Abu Muslim had already given the order to retreat, and countless Arab soldiers began to retreat like a receding tide. If Uzun and the 3 elite great generals of the Western Turks could not defeat the Tang dynasty, the Arabs were even less likely to do so. All soldiers, attack! Wang Chong did not let this chance go. The massive God King Yama swung its 4 arms down. Boom boom boom. 4 explosions resounded over the battlefield, and screams filled the air as hundreds of Arab cavalry were pulverized by the God King Yama's immense power. Bloody mist filled the air, and countless severed limbs were scattered across a radius of several hundred zhang. On the path of martial arts, the strength of a great general was completely different from that of a brigadier general. With the power of the God King Yama formation, Wang Chong's every attack had the power to sunder the heavens. Boom! Chapter 931. Enough. Let them do as they please. As Wang Chong and Qing Qianli were continuing to press their advantage, Gao Xianji's voice stopped them. His eyes were fixed forward, and his voice was tinged with a unique ripple of emotion. Wang Chong raised his head and followed Gao Xianji's gaze. He immediately saw 2 majestic figures riding atop 2 divine steeds in the middle of the vast Arab army, towering over the Arabs like a vast ocean. Even the hundreds of thousands of Arab cavalry around them could not suppress their sharpness. The 2 of them didn't attack. They simply stood there quietly, and yet, 2 enormous streams of essence energy exploded out from them, piercing through heaven and earth. Even at this distance, Wang Chong could sense the boundless energy exuding from their bodies. Moreover, they were even stronger than his God King Yama. Abu Muslim. This thought flitted through Wang Chong's mind as he gazed at that stalwart Arab commander in the black cloak, his entire body exuding a steely aura. Wang Chong had never seen Abu Muslim before, but the moment he saw him, Wang Chong immediately recognized him. Abu Muslim's eyes were cold, valiant, and devoid of emotion. They were like cold steel, and his aura was like the undulating tide, vast and boundless. Wang Chong felt that he was even stronger than the celestial wolf great general Dewusili, one of the top 3 experts of the Western Turkic Khaganate. At this moment, Wang Chong suddenly understood why Gao Xianji, the western region's war god of Gao Xianji, had been so heavily injured upon his arrival at Talas that even his armor had been shattered. This person was extremely powerful, even stronger than Gao Xianji. Next to him is Arab Vice-Governor Ziyad. Abu Muslim and him are both extremely powerful. If we continue to advance, Abu Muslim and Ziyad will have to enter the field. In our current situation, both sides will be heavily injured, and we won't have much of an advantage. If Wuxia Wuzong and the others return at this time, they will really fall into an extremely passive situation. Gao Xianji said. When speaking of Abu Muslim, Gao Xianji's voice was tinged with extreme apprehension. It was obvious that Gao Xianji viewed this Arab governor, whom he had been fighting with for the last 2 months, as a formidable foe. The entire battlefield was silent, with only the sound of both armies retreating like the tide. Wang Chang's group and the 2 highest Arab commanders stared at each other from a distance, all of them silently restraining themselves. Daluan Ruozhen, what's going on? Why did they give the order to retreat at this time? If I had a little more time, I might have been able to kill that brat for you. At the same time, as the vast sea of Arab soldiers retreated, Du Sili rode his Turkic steed back to the hills behind the battlefield. At the most intense moment of his battle with Wang Chong, Daluan Ruozhen's horn had put an end to it, forcing him to retreat. This left Du Sili very dissatisfied. Great General, don't be in such a rush. Wang Chong is still trapped in Talas. If Great General wishes to fight and kill him, there will still be a chance in the future. But if this battle continues, it will be extremely disadvantageous to us. Daluan Ruozhen indifferently said, his expression relaxed and carefree. Du Sili's harsh tone had not the slightest effect on him. Disadvantageous? What disadvantageous? Daluan Ruozhen's words finally brought Du Sili to his senses. Daluan Ruozhen was a civil minister. His martial arts were not very high, but he had a unique temperament that could calm even the most irascible of people. This was something that only Daluan Ruozhen possessed. Even Du Sili had been unwittingly influenced by it. This one can understand that Great General wishes to avenge a good Ulan, and this one can also understand that you wish to quell the rage of those 200,000 warhorses for Ishbara Kagan. But now is far from the time to fight to the death with the Tang dynasty. Has Great General forgotten who the main force fighting against the Tang people is? Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled. With a wave of his sleeve, he placed his hands behind his back, his entire being exuded a scholarly and dashing aura that seemed to be able to guide the world. Buzz! Du Sili's mind trembled at these words, and he finally came back to his senses. His eyes, which had been agitated by rage, gradually regained their clarity. It seems like Great General has already understood. No matter what, we are not the main force fighting against the Tang dynasty, and with our few people, we would never have been able to defeat the Tang dynasty. Has Great General not realized? Even now, the Arabs have not succeeded in breaking through the Tang people's first steel defense line. As Daluan Ruozhen spoke, he waved his sleeve and took 2 steps forward, his gaze fixed on the receding tide of Arab cavalry. In this battle, Wuxia Wuzong, Dusong Mangpoj, and Du Sili had all been in the center of the battlefield, so they had not been paying attention to the other sides of the battlefield. But Daluan Ruozhen had been overseeing the entire situation, paying attention to all the changes taking place in the various areas of the battlefield. This battle had originally been extremely simple. The Uzan, the Western Turks, and the Arabs had joined forces, relying on their superior numbers and top-class fighting power to utterly crush the Tang dynasty. The Arabs had used their main force of several 100,000 to delay the Tang dynasty, and the Uzan and the Western Turks had supported them from the side. In just a few hours, the battle had ended. But this ordinary and simple battle that didn't require much strategy or tactics had, because of Wang Chang's 2 steel walls and Wang Chang's special tactics, the Arabs had supported the Tang dynasty while the Uzan and the Western Turks had become the main force of the decisive battle. This was a completely different version of Daluan Ruozhen's and Du Sili's plans. You mean, that the Arabs are using our strength to wear down the Tang dynasty? Du Sili suddenly said. That's not necessarily true. The Tang dynasty has placed all its heavily armored shield men, spearmen, and other defensive forces behind the first steel defense line so that they can use their main force to deal with us. This has always been the result that they want to create. But we can't rule out the possibility that this is the first time we've allied with the Arabs, and we're still far from having a deep alliance. If we can use our strength to weaken the Tang dynasty, I'm sure that Abu Muslim would be happy to do so. Dalawan Ruozan indifferently said. If the main force of this battle became the Uzan and the Western Turks, he would have completely lost. In the end, the only ones who would benefit would be the Arabs or the Tang dynasty. I understand. Wuxia was quiet for a few moments, the anger on his brow finally beginning to fade. Wang Chong truly needed to be killed, but Dalawan Ruozan's words were not without reason. This battle of Talas was far too special, far different from any battle that Wuxia had experienced in the past. A tiny Talas had gathered far too many great generals, far too many soldiers, and far too many factions. Pulling one hair could affect the entire body. This was something that both sides needed to carefully consider. You understand the Tang dynasty better than I do, so I'll leave this battle to you. Wuxia said. From the very beginning, Dalawan Ruozan had finally obtained his approval. Buzz. But at this moment, a massive disturbance came from the western side of Talas. Dalawan Ruozan, Wuxia, Huishu Wazang, and Dusong Mengpoj all turned in that direction. It's him. Dalawan Ruozan's pupils constricted, his mind in shock. Just what is this brat up to? At almost the same time, Wuxia, Huishu Wazang, and the others also noticed that thin figure in front of the first defense line, but brimming with boundless power. Abu Muslim. In front of the first defense line, Wang Chong rode the white-hoofed shadow out of the army and toward Abu Muslim's location under the shocked and respectful gazes of countless soldiers. Wang Chong had not said this name in the language of the Tang dynasty, but in the somewhat choppy Arabic. His voice immediately attracted the attention of almost all the Arab cavalry in the distance. This was the first time they had heard the name of their own commander from the mouth of the Tang people's commander. Wang Chong. Nearby, Gao Xianji's face flickered as he stared in shock at Wang Chong. He was not proficient in Arabic, but from Wang Chong's pronunciation, he could tell that it was a familiar name. Whether it was Gao Xianji or Qing Qianli, these two commanders of the Anxi Protectorate Army, none of them knew what Wang Chong wanted to do by walking out at a time like this. Wang Chong did not turn his head, only made a reassuring gesture with his back to the pair. In the distance, the retreating Arab army was in an uproar. Abu Muslim and Ziyad stood side by side, their steely eyes showing a hint of emotion for the first time. It was not common for a Tang dynasty commander to be able to speak Arabic. The Abbasid Caliphate's governor of the East, Abu Muslim, is here. Who is speaking on the other side? Report your name. Abu Muslim lightly patted his black Sasanian steed as he slowly rode against the retreating army. His speed was neither fast nor slow, but it exuded an extremely powerful aura. It was like an enormous mountain was slowly moving toward them. Everyone who saw his body would feel a powerful, ocean-like pressure pouncing on them. Empire of the Tang dynasty, Qixi Protector General, Wang Chong. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as his body exploded with a powerful aura. Even though he had not reached Abu Muslim's level, Wang Chong's aura was as vast as the sun, moon, and stars in the sky, not one bit inferior to Abu Muslim's. At this moment, Wang Chong had finally exploded with the aura of the war saint of the Central Plains. One was the strongest war saint of the Central Plains while the other was the most iron-fisted governor of the West. The most outstanding and important figures of the empires of the East and West were like meteors crashing into the earth, meeting for the first time in this tiny city of Talas. Chapter 932. Wang Chong. A glimmer of light flashed through Abu Muslim's eyes, but his chiseled face, brimming with blood and callousness, did not show much emotion. Speak, Tang people. What do you want to do? As he spoke, he stared straight at Wang Chong. His body did not make any movements, but a powerful aura erupted from him. As the governor of the east of the Arabian Empire, he was the most powerful existence east of Khorasan. Other than the caliph, he was the most influential person in the East. Countless empires in the East had been flattened by his horse, and countless generals of Arabia followed his lead. In the entire world, there were very few people that a general of Abu Muslim's level cared about. In the entire Tang dynasty, only Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji was worthy of his attention. Everyone else was nothing to worry about. Abu Muslim would never speak to anyone on the front lines, and he had only responded to Wang Chong because Wang Chong, a Tang people, could speak the noble Arabian language. This was already an additional favor. Abu Muslim. As the Qishi Protector General of the Tang dynasty, I will give you one final warning. Wang Chong's resounding voice resounded over the battlefield, his expression solemn and serene. His aura was like an unsheathed sword, so sharp that no powerful existence could ignore him. Take your army and leave this place. No matter how many countries Arabia has conquered, the last thing you should do is encroach on the western regions and make an enemy of the Tang dynasty. The battlefield was eerily still, with only Wang Chong's booming voice echoing through the air. At this moment, even Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli were silent. Tang people, this is impossible. Abu Muslim's reply was concise and decisive. No country on this continent can stop the iron hooves of Arabia from conquering, not even the Tang dynasty. Abu Muslim's reply was as cold as steel. All was quiet. Although many people didn't understand Arabic, they could still understand a great deal from Abu Muslim's cold and hard face. The atmosphere suddenly became more and more tense. Ha! Hearing Abu Muslim's words, Wang Chong suddenly laughed. Clang, in an instant, everyone heard a sword cry that was clear and melodious like a dragon. As the Arabs, the Tang dynasty, and even the distant Uzan and the Western Turks watched, Wang Chong unsheathed his sword, the cold and dazzling Wuxia steel sword covered in flowing water, and pointed it at the heavens, its radiance reflecting off of it. If that's the case, then listen carefully to every word I'm about to say. This war is far from the end, but only the beginning. The locations of its conquests are not limited to Talas or the western regions. Starting from this moment, with Talas as the starting point, all of Samarkand, Khorasan in the rear, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad, and the distant west will all be within the scope of this war. This is not just a war between you and me, nor is it just a war in the western regions, but a war between the empires of the east and the west. Starting from this moment, no matter what, if Arabia cannot conquer the Tang dynasty will conquer the Tang dynasty. All Arabia will speak the language of the Tang people, and all of Arabia will submit to the rule of the Tang dynasty. Li Sai, please repeat what I just said in the language of the Tang dynasty. Boom! The first to react to Wang Chong's words were the Arab army, and all of them fell into an uproar. Then, when Li Sai repeated Wang Chong's words in the language of the Tang people, even the distant Daluan Ruozan, Dewusili, Huishu Wazang, and Daluan Ruozan paled. This scoundrel, he really dares to speak. A strange look flitted through Dewusili's eyes. The Turks were a nomadic people whose footprints had spread throughout the western regions, even to Arabia and Kerak Spazinu. He was deeply aware of just how powerful an empire Arabia was. If not for this, he would not have brought 40,000 soldiers with him. It was precisely because he was well aware that not even a celestial wolf great general like Dewusili dared to lightly say such words. I'm afraid that he's not just talking. Daluan Ruozan indifferently said, a strange light in his eyes, but he said no more. In the entire world, if anyone said such words, the Arabs would not need to care. Only that youth, no one could ignore his words. Just like in the southwest back then, no one could believe that a teenager, leading several thousand soldiers, had managed to change the outcome of a clearly lost battle, defeating the 400,000 soldiers under his command. This 17-year-old protector general had never been just talking. In the distance, Wang Chong paid no attention to the reactions of the crowd. With these final words, Wang Chong immediately turned his horse around and began to slowly make his way back to his camp. You're too arrogant. Abu Muslim finally spoke in the middle of the army. The first sentence that came out of his mouth shocked everyone. Because he was speaking the language of the Tang dynasty. How could this be? At this moment, even Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli were dumbfounded. The two of them had battled with Abu Muslim for so long, but this was the first time they had heard that Abu Muslim could speak the language of the Tang dynasty. But after a moment's thought, their hearts sank. Arabia and the Tang dynasty were two completely different countries, and the two countries had not had much interaction before this. Abu Muslim was a pure soldier, the Abbasid Caliphate's governor of the East, so there was no need for him to learn the language of the Tang dynasty. It was clear that Abu Muslim had long since harbored ambitions for the Tang dynasty. In the crowd, Wang Chong stopped, but he did not turn his head. Tang people, you have no idea just how ignorant and foolish your words were. Abu Muslim stared at Wang Chong's back, his face twisted into a nasty grimace. Wang Chong's words had thoroughly infuriated him. This was the first time in the history of Arabia that a great general of an enemy state had threatened to conquer all of Arabia. In our Arabian Empire, there is a saying, even though knowledge is far away in China, it should still be sought after. If you knew just how powerful the true Arabia is, you would not have said such arrogant and ignorant words. Do you see the vast army behind me? The army that you've been fighting with for several months is just one of the armies of the empire in the east. What you see is only the tip of the iceberg. There are at least 1 million more armies like this in the empire. Abu Muslim slowly spread open his arms, his entire body exploding with a tidal wave of energy that caused the surrounding space to twist and distort, black spatial fissures appearing in the air. Tang people, you will pay a price for those words you said just now. Not just you, but the entire Tang dynasty. Then let's fight. Wang Chong only faintly smiled. Humph. As you wish. At Wang Chong's words, Abu Muslim's expression finally turned gloomy and cold. Turning his horse around, he began to gallop toward the western side of the city of Talas. Retreat. With a wave of Abu Muslim's arm, the tens of thousands of Arab cavalry immediately retreated like the receding tide. With this, the second day of battle came to an end. In the future, the Arabs won't rest until they're dead. The galloping of hooves could be heard as Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli slowly rode out from the rear on his divine steed bestowed by the emperor. As they looked at Wang Chong, the two of them were filled with admiration. The more they interacted with Wang Chong, the deeper their understanding of him became, and the more they sensed the charm hidden within his body. Hasn't it always been like this? Wang Chong faintly smiled. The Tang dynasty has never lacked for opponents, nor has it lacked for Arabia. No one has been able to defeat us in the past, and no one in the present or in the future will be able to defeat my Tang dynasty. That's right. No one can defeat the Tang dynasty. Gao Xianji and Qing Qianli glanced at Wang Chong in surprise, and then the three of them smiled at each other. Retreat. With this order, the army retreated to the two steel defense lines, officially ending the battle. The battlefield was littered with corpses of humans, horses, wolves, and vultures. The air was thick with the pungent stench of blood. From the time the sun rose to noon, although the battle had ended, the cleanup work after the battle was far from over. Zhang Ke, have you calculated the casualties? Outside Talas, Wang Chong held his hands behind his back as he spoke without turning his head. Replying to Marquis, the statistics have been completed. In the last 2 days of battle, we lost more than 30,000 men and another 10,000 were wounded. The vast majority of the casualties were the mercenaries of the western regions. Our equipment was better, so our losses were not very high. Zhang Ke's voice came from behind him, his back bowed and his expression respectful. In other words, we only have around 100,000 soldiers left. Wang Chong slightly creased his brow. Yes. Then what about the losses of the Western Turks, Uzan, and Arabs? Wang Chong asked. We don't have a concrete count, but based on the estimates of the scouts, the Western Turks and Uzun lost around 40,000 elites and nearly 30,000 wolf corpses. The giant wolves brought by the Western Turks had a major impact on our attacks. Many of the ballista bolts were blocked by these wolf corpses, and the cavalry had to prioritize dealing with these Turkic wolves. As for the Arabs, they lost nearly 80,000 soldiers yesterday. Today, our main force was focused on dealing with the Western Turks and Uzun, while the Arabs focused on defense. But even so, Chen Bin's ballista army and General Wang Yan's infantry had managed to kill a large number of Arabs, more than 30,000 of them. In addition, a large number of people are injured. I estimate the number to be close to 40,000. Zhang Ke sincerely said. Wang Chong fell silent at Zhang Ke's words. Both Daluan Ruozan and Abu Muslim had made ample preparations for this battle. The enormous number of giant wolves de Wuxia had brought, the Arab Iron Beast army, and the hundreds of catapults had not been able to inflict as much damage as Wang Chang's ballista army had expected. Understood. Pass on my order. All the wounded are to be bandaged and moved into Talas to recover. In addition, call Sir Zhang over. Yes, Marquis. Zhang Ke quickly departed. Chapter 933. Marquis, you were looking for me. Zhang Shouji respectfully bowed in front of Wang Chong. In the 2 days of battle, the busiest member of the Tang army had been Zhang Shouji. In the 2 days of battle, the busiest member of the Tang army had been Zhang Shouji. As the highest civil engineer of Talas and one of the most formidable civil engineers of the Tang dynasty, Zhang Shouji had personally built the 2 steel defense lines and the several hundred steel catapults on the walls of Talas. From the southwest to the northwest, Zhang Shouji's role was only getting more and more important. One could say that, though he didn't know any martial arts, in all of Qixi, his importance was probably second only to Wang Chong. This is for you. Modify and strengthen the 2 defense lines. As Wang Chong spoke, he took out a blueprint and handed it over. This was a blueprint that he had redesigned after the conclusion of the battle, based on the current situation and the characteristics of the 3 sides. Other than Wang Chong, Zhang Shouji, and a few of his core disciples, no one else could understand these blueprints. Relax. Leave this matter to me. Zhang Shouji glanced at the blueprint and quickly nodded. The situation was urgent, and the lives of more than 100,000 soldiers were at stake. Zhang Shouji did not dare to tarry. He took the blueprint and hurriedly left. Li Sai, I'll leave the matters here to you. Strengthen the defenses and keep an eye on the movements of Uzun, the Western Turks, and the Arabs. If anything happens, inform me at any time. Once Zhang Shouji had left, Wang Chong continued to issue orders. This general will go. Li Sai sternly said. Su Ke, Chen Bin. Hurry up and repair the ballistae. Prepare for battle at any moment. Yes, Marquis. The pair loudly replied. After taking care of everything, Wang Chong passed through the gates of Talas with a wave of his sleeve. Talas had sentries every few steps and all kinds of military fortresses, bazaars, and halls, all constructed of massive stone. Although it was not as luxurious or beautiful as the great Tang of the Central Plains, it had its own grandeur. Moreover, from the layout of the city, one could faintly see that this strategic economic and military center on the Silk Road of the western regions had once been a prosperous city. Lord Protector General, this way, please. Milord and General Wang are already waiting inside. Upon seeing Wang Chong, an officer of the Anxi Protectorate Army respectfully greeted him. Wang Chong nodded. Lead the way. After passing through the corridors, Wang Chong saw the armored Gao Xianji in the main hall of Talas. At his side were Qing Qianli, Shi Yuan Qing, Wang Chong's father Wang Yan, his big brother Wang Fu, and the new Karluk chiefs Guli and Ferganan. The moment they saw Wang Chong enter, everyone turned to look at him. Huh, Wang Chong, you've come. We were in the middle of our calculations, and everyone else is here except for you. Gao Xianji had been in the middle of a discussion with his generals, but when he saw Wang Chong, he immediately walked around the model of Talas and went to welcome him, a relaxed smile on his lips. The others didn't react when they saw this scene, but a brown-bearded man with a powerful aura beside Qing Qianli had a shocked expression on his face. Gao Xianji had a proud personality, and in the western regions, he was known as the Anqi war god. All the tribal chiefs had to lower their heads in front of Gao Xianji. He had followed Gao Xianji for 10-some years, but he had never seen him so courteous to anyone. No, this was no longer just being courteous. From the fact that Gao Xianji was willing to personally welcome that young man in front of everyone, it was clear that in his heart, that young man's status and importance was enough to be on equal footing with him, an existence that Gao Xianji viewed as an equal. I've kept you waiting. Wang Chong paid no attention to anything else. After returning a bow to Gao Xianji and exchanging some pleasantries, he strode up to the model of Talas in the center of the hall and began to examine it. This model was completely different from the one Wang Chong had used in Qixi. The details were much more detailed and complete. Building a model was a basic ability of a general. Sometimes, it was possible to see through a sandbox and see a general's abilities. The Anqi Protectorate Army's battle model has been meticulously planned out, from the terrain around Talas, the hills and valleys, to the small ravines and ravines of the battlefield. Everything has been taken into account. From this point of view, Gao Xianji truly lives up to his reputation as the wall of the Tang dynasty, the Anqi war god. Wang Chong pensively gazed at the model. "Milord, I'm too polite." As Wang Chong was examining the model, he suddenly heard a soft voice in his ear. This voice was coarse and thick, and it was heavily accented, clearly belonging to the Hu. Wang Chong turned his head and immediately saw a boorish face with a particularly striking brown beard. Wang Chong said nothing, only gave him a questioning look. "This one is the leader of the Ferganan, Banahan. Paying respects to Lord Protector General. In the future, when Lord Protector General has the time, I hope that you will come to our Ferganan for a chat. Banahan will definitely be waiting for you." Banahan gave a slight bow, an extremely respectful expression on his face. "It's him." Wang Chong hadn't paid much attention at the start, but upon hearing the name Ferganan, a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. Only with Wanha Peiluo and the Karluks as the vanguard could the loyalty of an ally of the Tang dynasty be even more apparent. In the entire history of the Tang dynasty, Ferganan and Banahan were extremely rare, loyal allies of the Tang dynasty. Whether in times of triumph or defeat, they would remain unswervingly loyal to the Tang dynasty. Even after the defeat at Talas, they had not wavered in the slightest. In a place like the western regions, where the culture of the Central Plains was uncivilized and the countries liked to sway left and right, this was an extremely rare and precious trait. Wang Chong instantly had a good impression of him. "Kogan is too polite." Wang Chong faintly smiled, a thought emerging in his mind. "Since this is our first meeting, this one just happens to have a gift for Kogan." "Oh." Banahan's curiosity was piqued when he heard these words. "I heard that the Khan has a great flame crow technique, which is a secret technique passed down in the palace. But because of its long history, coupled with the internal strife of the palace and various other reasons, the technique is incomplete, so it is difficult for the Khan to make further progress. I have an incantation that may be able to help the Khan complete the Great Flame Crow technique and help the Khan break through the bottleneck and reach a higher level." Wang Chong smiled. "Lord Protector General, is this true?" Banahan's eyes widened at these words, his face filled with pleasant surprise, not daring to believe his ears. There was such a thing. At this moment, even Gao Xianji couldn't help but lean over. Wang Chong silently smiled. There was truly no need to doubt the Farahan's loyalty, but as the chief of the Farahan tribe, Banahan's strength was not very famous in the western regions. Even Wanha Peiluo was firmly above him. This could only be described as a pity. Wang Chong had read a few records, so he knew that the crux of the problem lay in the legendary Great Fire Crow art of the Farahan tribe. This legendary art had become incomplete due to a famous internal conflict within the Farahan tribe, resulting in the Farahan Khagan's accomplishments being extremely limited. This problem persisted until the future Great Calamity arrived, when all of the martial arts were gathered and mutually verified. Only after everyone's wisdom and experience were gathered was this problem solved. Wang Chong had only suddenly remembered this point when he saw Banahan's Farahan Khagan Banahan. Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we try. Wang Chong said. Calling over a guard, Wang Chong brought over a brush, ink, and paper. He quickly wrote down the mnemonic for the Great Fire Crow art on paper and gave it to Ferganan. Banahan treated it like a precious treasure. After this small interlude, everyone turned their attention back to the sand table. Although we've won the battles of the last 2 days, we still can't let our guard down. The first to speak was Qing Qinli. As the Vice Protector General of the Anxi Protectorate Army, Qing Qinli had a great deal of authority on the battlefield. Duluan Ruozan still hasn't retreated, and Abu Muslim still has his main force. Most importantly, he still hasn't personally entered the field. We don't know how many moves he has up his sleeves, or how many soldiers he has in reserve. The word soldiers in reserve instantly caused the mood in the hall to turn heavy. Everyone knew that the Arabs loved to fight, and Talas was too close, allowing them to recruit soldiers from the rear at any time. In truth, the Arabs had been recruiting soldiers this entire time. This was why, in the 2 months that the Anxi Protectorate Army had been fighting with the Arabs, Abu Muslim soldiers had only been increasing, not decreasing. When Wang Chong had arrived at Talas, there were still more than 300,000 soldiers stationed outside the walls. The hall was quiet, but in the end, it was Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, who broke the silence. Although the Arabs have come with a ferocious momentum and the battlefield is closer to them, numbers are not the only things that matter in war. There is also overall strength, training, cooperation, strategy, tactics, logistics, and all other aspects. From these considerations, I believe that there is no need for everyone to worry too much. The urgent task at hand is to discuss how to deal with the alliance between the Uzan, Western Turks, and Arabs. My opinion is the same as Lord Father's. Abu Muslim has still not retreated. If we don't thoroughly defeat him, this war can't be considered over. Wang Chong's big brother, Wang Fu, also spoke up at this moment. Abu Muslim is not that easy to deal with. I've fought with him for more than 2 months, so I have some understanding of him. He likes to constantly test the waters, using high-intensity attacks to assault his opponents like a tide until his opponents will crumble and he strikes fear into their hearts. And even if his opponent doesn't lose, he will gradually grasp your weakness through these constant attacks. In the end, he will personally strike and use his overwhelming advantage to deal a fatal blow to finish off his opponent. Gao Xianji suddenly interrupted. His expression was solemn, and there was a hint of warning in it. Moreover, the Arabs worship battle. No matter how many people they lose, as long as Abu Muslim does not give the order to retreat, they will never retreat, much less give up. To the Arabs, as long as they can defeat their opponents and conquer their country, they don't care about the price. In this aspect, they are completely different from the other opponents of the Tang dynasty. Chapter 934. In truth, I feel that the Tang dynasty is no weaker than the Arabs in terms of fighting power. Lord Gao Xianji only has 70,000 soldiers, but he was able to hold back the Arabs at Talas for more than 2 months. Not even Abu Muslim was able to do anything. To the best of our Ferganians' understanding of the Arabs, this sort of war has never been fought before. And there's also this milord. In yesterday's 2 battles, although the Arabs had the absolute advantage in numbers and even gained a new ally, they were still no match for this milord. In these 2 battles, more than 100,000 people died while the Tang dynasty's losses were extremely limited. If this news were to get out, the countries conquered by Arabia would find it hard to imagine. Of all the countries on the continent, probably only the Tang dynasty can defeat the Arabs. In the eyes of us mercenaries, the Tang dynasty is the strongest country, which is why we are willing to fight alongside the Tang dynasty. The Ferganan chief Banahan suddenly spoke, his expression one of utmost sincerity. The Anshi Protectorate army had always had two major allies, the Karluks and the Ferganans. The Karluk leader Wanha Peluo was dead, so the only mercenary who could speak to Gao Xianji was Banahan. Banahan's words surprised everyone in the hall. No one had expected that this Ferganan chief would have such a strong faith in the Tang dynasty. The heavy mood in the hall instantly vanished, and even Wang Chong couldn't help but smile. The Ferganans truly were the most loyal allies of the Tang dynasty. But we're currently surrounded by enemies. No matter which side we attack, we'll be attacked by the other side. If we don't resolve this problem, we'll still lose. At this moment, a voice suddenly interrupted. Before his voice faded away, the atmosphere that was eased by Banahan instantly vanished. Everyone's gazes turned to look at Guli, who was deep in thought beside the sand table, unaware of the changes in his surroundings. Perhaps it was because the surroundings were unusually quiet, but Guli finally sensed something. He raised his head and realized that he had misspoken. His expression changed immediately. The Karluks had colluded with Arabia, and now that Wanha Peluo had been exposed and killed, the Karluks were in a crisis of trust. If they were to do anything out of line at this time and anger the Tang dynasty, the Karluks would truly be unable to recover from this setback. Guli is correct. Being attacked from the front and rear is a major taboo in the art of war. If we don't resolve this problem, we'll find it very difficult to concentrate on dealing with the Arabs. Just as Guli was feeling uneasy and full of despair, a sonorous voice suddenly rang out in the hall. Wang Chong suddenly spoke. Lord Protector General. At this moment, Guli felt like he had found a life-saving straw, and his entire body instantly calmed down. Those who didn't know Wang Chong's background would only see that he was 16 or 17, but those with some understanding would know that this young Protector General's status in Talas was not one bit inferior to Gao Xianji's, perhaps even higher. After all, he was the commander of the more than 100,000 soldiers outside the city. But this matter isn't too difficult to resolve. Although Abu Muslim can get an endless stream of soldiers from the Arabs, the same can't be said for the other side. As Wang Chong spoke, his eyes were as firm and unwavering as a boulder. It was like there was no difficulty in the world that could defeat him, and anyone who saw his eyes would be infected and filled with confidence in him. Uzun and the Western Turks have a total of 120,000 soldiers. In the first battle, they've already lost more than 40,000 soldiers, leaving only around 70,000. From now on, Daluan Ruozan will be extremely cautious. He won't take as many risks as he did before. With every soldier he loses a soldier. And if I remember correctly, the Mutri Great Cavalry are the force guarding the royal capital of Uzun. Nothing has happened to the royal capital, but the Mutri Great Cavalry have appeared in Talas. If my guess is correct, this is an army that Daluan Ruozan has privately gathered against the will of the Tsenpo. It's impossible for him to recruit any more reinforcements from Uzun. Buzz. Everyone was stunned by Wang Chong's words. Even Gao Xianji's eyes widened, a pensive look on his face. In this war, many people were only paying attention to what was going on, not what was going on outside the war. Even Gao Xianji was no exception. The Anshi Protectorate army had far too many matters that required his attention. It wasn't that he couldn't sense it, but Wang Chong was far more sensitive to strategic considerations than any of the other commanders here, including himself. You mean to say that this is a war started by one person? Gao Xianji said, a pensive look on his face. I can't be wrong. Wang Chong indifferently said, his profound gaze seemingly able to see through everything. Daluan Ruozan and Huishu Wuzong were defeated in the southwest, and Dusong Mengpoj was defeated at the Triangular Gap. The three of them had lost almost all of their troops. No matter how open-minded that Senpo is, he would never send more soldiers to them in such a short time. Moreover, if it really was that Senpo's idea, it's definitely not just 70,000 soldiers. In addition, although Wuxia is known as the Celestial Wolf Great General and possesses great strength, he only has 40,000 soldiers under his command. But he only had 40,000 men under his command. The rest were the giant wolves that the Western Turks had brought from the steppe. I believe that Ishbara Khagan's probing has already made his intentions clear. The Western Turkic Khaganate won't send any reinforcements. The one with the most calculations in the temple would win while the one with the least would lose. As a great general, one not only had to consider what was in front of them and what they could see on the battlefield, they also had to calculate what they could not see on the battlefield. This included logistics, soldiers, supplies, politics, and so on. In this battle, Wang Chong was not only paying attention to the battlefield, but also to those outside. Whether Daluan Ruozan was willing or not, Wang Chong had already obtained what he wanted from this battle. In this battle, Daluan Ruozan had staked everything on one throw. His situation was far from being as glorious as it seemed. In a few sentences, Wang Chong had clearly analyzed the situation they were facing. For a moment, the hall was eerily silent, all of them having pensive looks on their faces. Wang Chong's explanation of the complicated situation, one that was extremely disadvantageous to them, gradually became clear in everyone's minds. As for Arabia, although Talas is closer to Arabia, don't forget that we are not fighting alone. Standing behind us is the entire Tang dynasty. As long as we can hold out for a while, our reinforcements will continue to come. In this aspect, we are completely different from the Western Turks and the Arabs. Wang Chong's voice was resounding and resounding. The moment Wang Chong spoke, the mood in the hall relaxed, and Banahan and Guli felt energized. It was true that Abu Muslim was backed by the massive Arabian Empire, but the Anshi Protectorate army was also backed by the massive Tang dynasty. The power of the Tang dynasty was renowned throughout the western regions. This was also why so many mercenary tribes of the western regions were willing to fight alongside the Tang dynasty against Arabia. Lord Protector General speaks the truth. I am confident that no matter what, the Tang dynasty will win in the end. Our Karluk tribe will pledge our lives to follow. Guli gave Wang Chong a grateful glance and seized the opportunity to express his loyalty. If not for Wang Chong's words just now, he would have become the target of everyone's criticism. Guli was gradually gaining more and more admiration for this new Chishi Protector General. Okay, we can talk about these things later. Let's first discuss tonight's problem. If everything goes according to plan, Abu Muslim and Daluan Ruozan will definitely move tonight. Wang Chong's eyes quickly focused on the model in the center of the hall. Ah! Guli froze for a moment, then asked in confusion. Milord, we're not fighting in the afternoon. Wang Chong, Gao Xianji, and Qing Qianli immediately began to laugh. Although Guli had succeeded Wan Hapeiluo as the new leader of the Karluk tribe, he was still very lacking in terms of military experience and strategy. Relax. If Abu Muslim planned to fight in the afternoon, he wouldn't have retreated in the morning. Wang Chong waved his hand and faintly smiled. In addition, he'll need to clean up the aftermath of the battle. He can't possibly start two battles in such a short time. Even if he's willing, Daluan Ruozan will never agree. All his energy will be focused on the night raid. After losing a battle during the day, all generals would consider attacking at night. This was because compared to the day, there were more advantages at night. For example, the opponent would not be constantly alert. The more intense the battle during the day, the more sleepy they would be at night. Moreover, the cover of the night would make it easier for the army to approach the enemy, and at the same time, it would greatly weaken the power of the archers and ballistae, making it even harder for them to aim. This truly is the case. Based on my understanding of Abu Muslim, he's an extremely aggressive person who will never let go of a chance at night. In addition, Daluan Ruozan will definitely be prepared, so the risk at night is no less than that of the day. But this is also an opportunity for us. Anshi Protector General Gao Xianji also spoke up at this moment. All is fair in war. Although we don't have as many soldiers as the Arabs, the Western Turks, or the Uzan, we have two major advantages, the steel walls and the city of Talas, which Abu Muslim doesn't have. The Arabs can attack us at night, but we can do the same to them. In addition, we can use this opportunity to gather some information. A faint smile appeared on Wang Chong's lips at these words. Many people knew that Gao Xianji was a godly strategist, that his attacks were swift and fierce, and that he would often appear in places his enemies would not expect, but few people knew that Gao Xianji had another trait: all was fair in war. He had used this move to conquer countless countries in the western regions. Chapter 935. I've exchanged blows with Daluan Ruozan. Based on my understanding of him, they're probably already discussing tonight's operation. If my guess is correct, their target tonight should be here. As Wang Chong spoke, he suddenly extended a finger and pointed at a point on the model. This finger instantly attracted the attention of everyone in the hall, countless gazes turning to the point Wang Chong was pointing at. The day part of our war with the Tang dynasty has ended, but the night part is still far from beginning. Meanwhile, on the eastern side of the battlefield of Talas, behind the high hills, in a typical Western Turkic golden tent, Daluan Ruozan, Dewusali, Huishu Wazang, Duso Mangpoch, and the other Western Turkic and Uzan commanders were gathered around Daluan Ruozan. Unlike Wang Chong and the others, they were not facing a model of Talas, but the precious map of the Uzan Empire. On the surface, the leader of the Tang dynasty is Gao Xianji, but in reality, the commander behind the scenes is that youngest son of the Wang clan that we're familiar with. Based on my understanding of him, he'll definitely make his move tonight. In the southwest, he already used this move. This time, he definitely won't let go of this opportunity. Just as Wang Chong had made the same judgment about Daluan Ruozan was making the same judgment about Wang Chong. These two old foes understood each other far too well. In addition, in the battle during the day, we've already lost many soldiers. Unlike the Tang dynasty, we don't have Tangli to replenish our forces, so I'm sure that Wang Chong will make us the focus of his attacks in the future. He will continue to use all effective methods to nibble away at our forces bit by bit until we are completely exhausted. If Wang Chong were here, he would definitely be shocked, because Daluan Ruozan had accurately described the strategy he had analyzed to the crowd in the Lord's Hall of Talas. Gong Ju Jeb, how are the fences and outposts I ordered you to build going? Daluan Ruozan turned his head and looked at an Uzan commander behind him. Replying to Prime Minister, we have already unloaded the goods from the accompanying vehicles and ordered the soldiers to start the construction. It should be completed in about 4 hours. His name was Ganju Jebu, and he had a rough face and a scimitar hanging from his waist. He looked extremely sturdy, and he was an Uzan general. Very good. Instruct all the soldiers to arrange the signal for patrol. In addition, try to light a large number of torches outside the defensive line. Anyone who approaches, be it the enemy or their own people, must be strictly guarded. If you run into your own people, you must be more vigilant than if you run into an enemy. Daluan Ruozan said. Isn't Prime Minister making a mountain out of a molehill? Isn't it a little too cautious to pass by at night? At this moment, a voice rang out in the tent. Dewusali had his hands behind his back. At the beginning, he had been listening silently, but as he listened, his wild, thick brows gradually furrowed. Daluan Ruozan was Uzan's prime minister. After a brief interaction, Dewusali had deeply acknowledged this fact. But Daluan Ruozan's solemn appearance, as if he was facing a great enemy, was something that Dewusali found hard to agree with. Perhaps not even Daluan Ruozan had been like this in the early morning battle. Supreme General has never dealt with that person, so it's normal that you don't know. That person's art of war is different from anyone else's. In the War of the Southwest, that person even used the tactic of having the Tang people disguise themselves as our Uzun and Mengshi Zhao people several times. It was raining at the time, so he ruined our encirclement several times. What should have been an absolute advantage was slowly destroyed by him, leading to our final defeat. Daluan Ruozhen, on the other hand, faintly smiled, not angry. Buzz. Hearing Daluan Ruozhen's words, Dewusili, Shamshak, Chechen Benba, and the other Turkic Khaganate generals all grimaced. They knew a little about the War of the Southwest, but they had never heard of such specific details. That's too despicable. Chechen Benba viciously said. The Western Turks were used to a head-on clash of swords and spears. If the enemy disguised themselves as Western Turks and launched a sneak attack, it would truly be impossible to defend against. Great General, please do not blame me. Prime Minister is just being a little cautious, and there's nothing wrong with being careful. I say this out of consideration for the entire army. Moreover, the battlefield is littered with corpses. The Tang dynasty has probably already taken measures to remove the armor from those corpses. In total, we lost nearly 40,000 men in this battle. If the Tang dynasty sends 40,000 men disguised as us to launch a sneak attack in the darkness, we simply won't be able to hold out and will suffer grievous losses. Huishu Wuzong sternly said. Both Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Wuzong were well aware of Wang Chang's habit of pretending to be his opponents and were extremely wary of it. Dewusili might not understand, but Daluan Ruozhen and Huishu Wuzong could not possibly not be on guard. Dewusili said nothing, but his brows creased. A small number of disguised soldiers wouldn't be a problem, but a large number was a different matter. If that brat from the Tang dynasty really was so crafty, they truly would have to be on guard. We'll do as you say. I will have my subordinates do their best to cooperate. But if the Tang dynasty can ambush us, why can't we attack them? Rather than sitting around and waiting for death, it's better to attack instead of defending. Dewusili sternly said. I agree with the great general on this point. Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled and lightly waved his sleeve. Turning his eyes back to the map of the continent on the hollowed-out table in the tent. Although the Tang dynasty is powerful and skilled in the art of war, more than half of them are mercenaries. The true Tang dynasty doesn't have many soldiers. Besides that, they also have a massive weakness. If we can grasp this weakness, we can cut off an arm. Even if the Tang dynasty still has 100,000 soldiers, there's nothing to fear. What weakness? Daluan Ruozhen's words immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the tent. Dewusili, Huoba Senji, Chechen Benba, and Shamshak all turned to look. Ballisti. Daluan Ruozhen faintly smiled as he spat out these two words. Ballisti. Daluan Ruozhen had no idea that in the Lord Hall of the city of Talas, Wang Chong was confidently saying these two words to all his generals. Ballisti are the cornerstone weapons of the Tang dynasty, and the imperial court has always been extremely strict in this aspect. In our thousandly raid to reinforce Talas, a significant number of Arabs, Western Turks, and Uzun soldiers died to ballista bolts. As a wise minister, Daluan Ruozhen couldn't have missed this point. If Daluan Ruozhen launches a night raid, his target will definitely be the ballisti. Wang Chang's words were powerful and resonant. He understood Daluan Ruozhen far too well. Unless it was a large-scale battle, a night raid would only be able to inflict very limited damage. Thus, strategic targets were usually chosen for sneak attacks, so Daluan Ruozhen would never miss out on this chance. Lord Protector General, ballisti are no small matter. If the Uzun and Western Turks choose ballisti as their targets, should we consider withdrawing the ballisti into Talas to avoid too many losses? Cheng Qianli probed. Ballisti were not unique to Wang Chong. The Anxi Protectorate army was equipped with many ballisti, but ballisti had always played a supporting role. They had never been an independent army like Wang Chang's, and they had never been able to divide up the work. On the battlefield, the power displayed by Wang Chang's ballisti army and the ballisti of the Anxi Protectorate army were like the difference between the heavens and the earth. If Daluan Ruozhen chose Wang Chang's ballista army as his target, it would definitely have a massive effect on the army of the Tang dynasty in the city of Talas. However, the ballista army was still an army under Wang Chang's command. Even though Qing Qianli was the vice protector general of the Anxi Protectorate army, he had no right to interfere. He could only offer suggestions. In the army, overstepping one's authority was a major taboo. There's no need. Wang Chong chuckled, unconcerned. The steel defense line needs to be coordinated with the ballista army to intimidate the enemy. Moreover, we can't rule out the possibility that Abu Muslim and Daluan Ruozhen will launch a large-scale attack at night. Only with the ballisti can we launch a timely counterattack. And without the ballisti, how can we lure out Daluan Ruozhen? The eyes of everyone in the hall brightened at these last words. It seems like Lord Protector General already has plans. Gao Xianji stroked his beard as he realized something and smiled at Wang Chong. Preparedness ensures success, and unpreparedness ensures failure. Since we know that Daluan Ruozhen will attack the ballisti, we can't possibly not be on guard. In addition, the Uzhen can attack us, and we can attack them. Wang Chong calmly said. Gao Xianji inwardly nodded at Wang Chong's words. Heroes cherished heroes. Although Wang Chong was much younger than him, he was a top-class great general in terms of strategic thinking. Many of his ideas and countermeasures were in line with Gao Xianji's. This was something that Gao Xianji could not sense from any of the other Anxi Protectorate army officers. Lord Protector General and I are of the same mind. Strike first to gain the initiative, and then strike later to restrain the enemy. Attacking is the best way to solve this problem. Gao Xianji's eyes brightened. Gao Xianji had never been a great general who defended cities. Proactively attacking had always been his style, and this was also why Gao Xianji had been so sympathetic to Wang Chong's idea of attacking. However, there is one more thing that Lord Protector General must guard against. Based on what I know, Daluan Ruozhen has exchanged blows with you before and has a deep understanding of your techniques. Moreover, he has always been an intelligent person, so he must have predicted that you would attack and prepared for it. If Lord Protector General wishes to attack, you must think carefully. Gao Xianji said. My lord is overthinking things. The art of war is deceitful, and Daluan Ruozhen only knows of my past strategies, not my present ones. The path of a general is based on the local conditions, and it is unpredictable as well as unpredictable. If I don't have a set style, how can my opponent defend against it? No matter how Daluan Ruozhen prepares, it's useless. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.